Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1311 of the War News stream. And today we have very big news that NATO's begun massive aerial patrols near Kaliningrad, and it's very unprecedented, actually. Also, Germany and Sweden have been invaded by more large drones in addition to Denmark, and Iran is restarting their nuclear site development against U.S. wishes. So, very big news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of significant developments across the whole of Europe, as one of the largest military air operations conducted by the NATO alliance is underway at this moment, with nearly 11 in-air tankers in the air at a single time, along with multiple surveillance and command aircraft as well. We are believing that right now there is a potential for 44 to 55 combat aircraft to be in the skies over Europe at this moment, which would make this the largest NATO air operation seen in prior years across the entirety of the NATO alliance. At the same time, the Federal Republic of Germany and the Kingdom of Sweden have both been dealing with drone incursions over the course of the day, as drones have been sighted within the very northern German state of Schleswig-Holstein, and also throughout the rest of the southern areas of Sweden as well. We have heard that German authorities were deliberating today throughout the Bundeswehr, the Reich, or the Bundestag, and other forms of the German government to explain or discuss what they will be doing when they find and detect these drones. As of right now, we have not been able to hear of them shooting down a single drone, but it does appear that they are still on the lookout for any of these drones within this northern area of Germany. At the same time, the Russian Federation is now starting to conduct its own flights of Ilyushin 76s into the Kaliningrad Kaliningrad Oblast, or the Kaliningrad Exclave as some people call it. We are not sure what's on board of these aircraft, but we do know that the Finnish are flying drones near to the area of the Baltic coastline to try and observe Russian ships traveling through the area, and to also try and gather their own information on what exactly is being onloaded and offloaded at the air bases near to the city of Kaliningrad. Outside of that, the People's Republic of China has issued a stark threat to the United States of America today in a joint statement with the Russian Federation, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and Pakistan that they completely denounce and detest any involvement in the United States of America's part to develop or operate any bases of any type, of any sort, for any purpose in and around the areas of Afghanistan, which is currently operated by the Taliban. The meantime, inside of East Asia, while the Chinese have been making that statement, we have also been able to hear that a very interesting allegation has been thrown forward by the Washington Post, saying that the Russian Federation is directly helping the People's Republic of China prepare for the invasion of Taiwan by providing information and vital knowledge to the Chinese airborne forces and also to their drone warfare forces as well. A small skirmish happened today on the Korean demilitarized zone at sea, which is called the Maritime Demarcation Line, as a North Korean merchant vessel attempted to cross through the border. A South Korean corvette opened fire, shooting a couple of rounds over the bow of the North Korean merchant vessel, causing it to turn around and flee back into North Korean waters. We are expecting that the North Koreans will make a response to this at some point within the next few hours, as usually the North Koreans never leave a situation like this unresponded to, or generally respond to a provocation without any return escalations. Outside of that, the Islamic Republic of Iran is also working on continuing their nuclear programs, as satellite photography has been seen around the area of Pickaxe Mountain, directly to the south of the Natanz uranium enrichment plant, which was destroyed during Operation Midnight Hammer, showing significant developments by the Iranians to try and further develop the Pickaxe Mountain site into a usable uranium enrichment plant, hidden well inside the mountain and much more difficult to strike and destroy for U.S. forces. Inside of the capital of Tehran, the Islamic Republic of Iran is continuing to mislead the public, stating that they will remain within the Non-Proliferation Treaty, while at the same time warning of untold escalations against anyone who threatens them, largely insinuating some sort of a nuclear response. We have also seen inside of Ukraine that the Ukrainian armed forces have continued to hold the Russian Federation back and have inflicted significant losses, while Zelenskyy has also alleged that Hungarian reconnaissance drones have actually flown across the Ukrainian border and have attempted to observe industrial sites around the city of Uzhhorod and Mukachevo. The Belarusians and the Russians had their own incidents today, with a significant train derailment happening on the Smolensk main line heading in and out of Belarus. An outgoing Belarusian fuel train heading into the Russian Federation ended up derailing just several miles across the border, causing a significant explosion and fire, which has completely destroyed that main line for the foreseeable future until the Russian Federation can effect repairs. However, before that train completely closed down the major rail corridor between the two nations, the Republic of Belarus did announce that Oreshnik hypersonic intermediate-range ballistic missiles are inside of their country and are actually usable or deployable. A fairly significant development, and one that is continuing to cause a great deal of concern, at least inside of the Western world. We have a load more news than that, including news that has come out of the Eastern Caribbean today and the United States of America, but of course, we are going to be making sure to cover each and every single piece of this as much as we can throughout the night, starting with our largest stories first, and then working our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the course of the night. But nevertheless, we, of course, have another major day of news ahead of us, and we'll be making sure to get it out there to all of y'all exactly what has been going on in the past 24 hours. Moving us into the largest developments that we have been able to see inside of Europe, we have been able to hear and see of a major NATO air operation that was conducted today. We have not been able to hear of any press releases being made about these deployments or maneuvers, for that matter, by the United States Armed Forces and those of our NATO allies, but over the whole of Europe, we have seen 11 in-air fueling tankers take off and conduct orbits throughout the course of the day, supporting some form of NATO air operations within this area. Just to let you all know, any one of these Stratotankers, like a KC-135, is capable of supporting anywhere between 4 and 5 combat aircraft. Considering that 11 of these aircraft were airborne today, not only from the US, but from our allies as well, it is decently likely that the NATO alliance as a whole could have had 44 to 55 combat aircraft airborne at any single given moment during this operation that was conducted over the course of the day. We can see that at least within the area of Eastern Europe, Europe and the southern Baltic, 3 U.S. Air Force KC-135 Stratotankers were present, and a British A330 Voyager in-air refueling tanker. Inside of southwestern Europe, we were also able to see a very large picture as well, forming with more aerial tankers taking off and conducting orbits around key areas of the region, including 2 Italian 767 aerial tankers, which are once again quite significant in size, and also a NATO-based tanker, an A330 Voyager operated directly by NATO, which was conducting an orbit off of the coast of Portugal, and also a French Airbus A330 under the call sign CTOM-35, which was conducting orbits off of the western French coast in the Bay of Biscay, near to the city of Bordeaux. Outside of that, and in northern Europe, near to the area of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and the Federal Republic of Germany, was another additional 2 KC-135 Stratotankers, which were conducting orbits right off the coast near to Newcastle upon Tyne, and we also saw a NATO-operated A330 take off from Germany and conduct what can be described as a racetrack orbit along the area of northwestern Germany, just to the west of the major city of Hamburg. This is a huge aerial operation, just in the form of the in-air fueling tankers that were present today, and more importantly, the amount of surveillance aircraft that were also present around the area of Kaliningrad. Excluding the redundant information that we got out of this post, there is a lot of additional information that we got about the NATO air deployments that were going on today, and the NATO air operations that are still ongoing almost continuously at this point for 2 straight days around the region of the Kaliningrad Oblast operated by the Russians. We were able to hear that an RC-135W rivet joint was continuing to conduct reconnaissance around the area, along with a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon also conducting its own reconnaissance within the southern Baltic, most likely against Russian maneuvers in the Baltic Sea as well as the Russian forces in Kaliningrad, along with a CL-600 Artemis II reconnaissance and targeting aircraft of the U.S. Army, which was also conducting its own flights today around the area of Lithuania, and an AEW&C Gulfstream E-550A aircraft of the Italian Air Force, which was also involved as a part of the surveillance and intelligence gathering operations around the Kaliningrad Oblast. All of these aircraft combined, including the possibility of additional combat aircraft being in the air, brings the amount of NATO aircraft that were in the skies today over Europe up to a whopping 57 at a bare minimum, and nearly 70 at the maximum estimate. This is an incredibly large amount of aircraft that were airborne at a single time today, and we are generally starting to expect that this may be a show of force against the Russian Federation. I once again want to note that we have not heard of any planned military exercises that would involve such a large air operation happening during this time, and over the course of the day we have not heard any press releases being made by the nations of Europe or the United States on this sort of an air operation, whether or not it would be a military exercise and what it was specifically for. Considering the lack of press releases and public information available on this development, this appears to be an impromptu military operation by the NATO alliance as a whole and coordinated by the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO forces inside of Europe, meaning that this is not a military exercise but something a little bit more than that. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that at the moment? Are they thinking that this is some sort of a show of force against the Russian Federation, some sort of a military exercise, or maybe even something else entirely different than that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so it looks like about 62% of the audience said it's a show of force against Russia by deploying all these fighter jets, spy planes, and tankers very close to Kaliningrad. We've also seen 19% say it seems like war preparations against the Kaliningrad enclave, and 14% said they are searching for the drone launchers, and they've simply launched a widespread range of aerial assets to be able to locate where these drones are coming from. So right now, we know very, very little. All we know is we were tracking all day long about 11 plus aerial assets of NATO being deployed near Denmark, near Sweden, near the bottom part, the southern part, and also near Kaliningrad and inside of Poland as well. So a very large and unprecedented NATO presence there in the area. And me personally, I believe it's a show of force against Russia because obviously Russia's in Kaliningrad. And also, I personally believe it could be the early stages of war preparations in the event that NATO needs to invade the Kaliningrad enclave. So I believe that is the case. Now, I would say I really don't buy the fourth option. They are searching for drone launchers. In my personal opinion, based on what I've seen so far, it is my very strong hunch right now that Denmark and all these other countries probably know exactly where these drones are coming from, but they're simply keeping it from the public. That is currently my hypothesis, and once again, we're waiting on details to confirm that, but I believe they have a very, very strong idea of where these drones are coming from, because we're starting to get some more details which suggest that there's much more to the story than meets the eye in the public and the press. So I'm with the 62%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 62%. This is certainly a show of force against the Russian Federation and is supposed to be a display of the awe-inspiring firepower that could be leveraged by NATO air forces within quite literally less than half an hour and operational against the Russian Federation at the outbreak of war. One does have to remember that there has been no releases or information today about military exercises that are being conducted by NATO forces within the area or any other national armed forces within the area as a whole. This means that this action today was not a pre-planned action and one that had a great deal of planning go into it beforehand, like the Iron Defender exercises, which are currently being conducted along the Polish-Lithuanian border by the Polish and Lithuanian armed forces. This is something that was undertaken within the last few days and executed as an operation as of today. That lets us know that this is supposed to be a show of force against the Russian Federation, also considering the timing that this is coming during the midst of multiple drone incursions that have been conducted within the Kingdom of Denmark, the Kingdom of Sweden, and the Kingdoms of Norway, along with the drone incursions into Poland, Romania, and several other Baltic states over the prior months. That would all be leading us to believe that this is supposed to be some sort of a threat or an intimidation tactic against the Russian Federation, because the simple truth of the matter is that the Russian Federation does not have the in-air fighting capabilities that the NATO alliance has in any single way, shape, or form. It's actually something of a miracle or a blessing, in a sense, that the United States of America's armed forces, along with most of our NATO allies, taking notes out of the U.S. playbook, focus on logistics so heavily. As a matter of fact, the United States Air Force is made up primarily of, at least for a significant portion of it, of aerial refueling tankers, which allows for our aircraft to stay in air during a far longer period of time, allowing them to stay in the fight a great deal, many hours, than their Russian counterparts would, and also allows us to ensure that there is an endless air presence as long as physically possible, something that the Russian Federation has a limited availability to do, but not a large enough availability like we would at any given single period of time or over a very long-term duration. That would significantly threaten the Russian Federation to see that kind of an air presence over Europe today, because they know that in an air war, if those aircraft have already taken off and are in the skies, there really is no way to be able to stop them, and the Russian Air Force really wouldn't have that much of a good chance to be able to shoot down those aircraft. There's a huge disparity, actually, between the Russian Federation's Air Force and that of many Western air forces, as a large amount of Russian pilots that are not involved in the war in Ukraine get practically little to no flight time in terms of hours to be able to make sure that they are well honed in on their craft of flying an aircraft or conducting combat operations. That's something that a lot of Russian pilots do not get the liberty to do, considering that the Russians financially do not have the money to pay for that kind of a flight hour time for each one of their pilots, and not only that, the Russian Federation is also greatly incompetent, and it's been known historically that generally their air force is not up to great standards at all whatsoever. For that reason, we would know that the Russian Federation would consider this not just to be a threat because of the competency and the abilities of NATO pilots and their aircraft, but also due to the fact that they can stay in air far longer than the Russians could before they have to turn around and land at a base and practically be a sitting duck while they refuel and rearm. So generally, this is definitely a show of force. However, it's a show of force that's happening at a time while we are showing no force in a whole different category, which is in the ongoing drone incursions that are happening throughout the whole of Europe. As today, we got reports out of the area of Schleswig-Holstein, a very northern German state bordering the nation of Denmark, that drones had started to enter the territory around the port of Kiel, and were now traveling further on into the Federal Republic of Germany, and now we have heard that the Germans really don't know where they are, at least for now. The German authorities have been trying to find these drones throughout the day, and the German government has been speaking with a great deal of deliberation today over what to do, as the German Interior Ministry is in intensive and ongoing discussions with the federal government, the Bundestag, and the Bundeswehr about the drone situation. The military and police are also working on the case. but they have not informed us about the number of locations or the drones and where they are right now and if they've shot any of them down. We still have not been able to get any updates on those reports even hours later, after the first reports were spotted within Schleswig-Holstein. This is a fairly large development once again, as we are seeing that the drone incursions are now expanding out of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, and are now also starting to span into Germany as well. We also heard of some intermittent drone violations that occurred today around the southern parts of Sweden, although I didn't include those on the map for brevity's sake. We're just going to include it as an annotated announcement as a part of the German announcement. This is also something that I'd like to point out, at least on my end, to build a little bit of a case here. It's a fairly interesting sort of occurrence to see that this happened specifically within Schleswig-Holstein. Many of y'all will realize that this area is directly bordering Denmark. And on top of that, this area is directly bordering this small little gulf, if you want to call it that, right here, south of the islands of Fen and west of the island of Lolland. Now that's a little bit interesting once again, because out of the entire time that we've heard of these drone incursions happening over about the past 4 days or so, a lot of them have been happening in a specific range. About 330 miles from that area, about 350 miles really, is the Oslo International Airport. And about 350 miles in the opposite direction is the Ramstein airfield down in southwestern Germany. Then around that area as well, at least within an incredibly short distance, is the nation of Denmark, the southwestern coast of Sweden, and also Schleswig-Holstein. And that all leads me to believe, folks, that there is a very decent, plausible explanation as to where these drones are coming from. And it most likely is coming from this Rapucha-class landing ship that was spotted yesterday exactly in this spot, which I verified today is inside of international waters. It appears that this Rapucha-class landing ship is pretty much slowly putting around this area, and in the meantime, it could be launching drones, considering that this vessel is a landing support ship, meaning that it has a great deal of cargo space for additional operations like these throughout the whole of Europe. And I would have to say that considering the range and distance that these drones have flown, Kaliningrad is a likelihood for these drones to be a launching point from, but this Rapucha-class landing ship is better suited and in a much greater position. Think about it for a minute.
That seems like a decent theory right there, but the only catch is, though, the only problem I see with it personally, if you look at a picture of that ship in the water, once again, go back to that picture real quick so we can let the audience see it. You can see right here in the image, there's really nowhere on the deck to really launch drones of the size that we've been seeing flying around the skies, at least in my opinion. There's really no deck space for it. And also, these are not small drones that we're seeing flying around. They appear to be rather large, and there's quite a few of them actually. So, and also, how do they retrieve them as well? Like, did they land in the water and they get picked back up by a crane on the ship? Or how are they being retrieved by the Russians if they're truly being launched from this vessel?
I would have to say that all those sorts of questions could be answered in different ways. For one, the Rapucha-class landing ships have incredibly large hulls within the, large holds within the hull of the ship. That could be something that could be used to launch drones. For example, that large cargo hatch at the bow of the vessel could be opened and drones could be launched from that cargo hatch. Drones could be captured on the front of the ship or the stern by an arresting net, similar to the ones that would be set up on an aircraft carrier like a Nimitz class or a Gerald R. Ford class. If an aircraft has a failing arresting hook, they could set up some sort of a net like that on the bow or stern of the vessel for the drone to fly into, rapidly slow the drone down without causing damage to it, and let it harmlessly drop to the deck and then recover the drone that way. There is certainly a way for these drones to be launched from a ship like this, and while the operations wouldn't be ideal, at least in terms of the kind of space and abilities of them to launch these sorts of drones, it wouldn't really be out of the question. One thing that I do have to point out to everyone is that we do not know how many drones actually are being launched at any given moment. We know that they're swarming an area because, at least in the situation with Denmark, they're closing down the national airspace all simultaneously. But what if it is just one drone per airport? And one drone, which we generally only see one at a time, at least on film, is enough to close down the airspaces at these airfields. This means that these drone incursions may be quite small, at least in actual number, and only consisting of maybe 7 to 8 drones in the air at a time. A Rapucha-class landing ship could slowly launch off 8 of these drones and eventually fly them back and recover them. Although it would be a somewhat cumbersome and difficult operation, it certainly isn't out of the question and could be possible. And once again, just to add this in there, this is probably the more important thing, considering that this ship is in the epicenter of the maximum range that we've seen these drones that have reached Norway and Ramstein Air Base, along with multiple other areas including Denmark and Schleswig-Holstein. it would make a lot of sense that they would be launched from that ship rather than Kaliningrad, because if they were launched from Kaliningrad, Ramstein Air Base and the Oslo International Airport are at somewhat different ranges and would suggest that these drones are not really necessarily operating from Kaliningrad, but from some sort of an epicenter where they're reaching the maximum range and then having to turn back to wherever they came from. That's generally what I would say. But nevertheless, a lot of people are talking about this ongoing situation with the drone sightings that have been seen within northern Germany today, and a lot of people are wondering, why won't any of the countries that are involved right now, like Germany, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and so on, actually state who these drones are from and why they're being launched inside of their territory? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So at this point, we've seen these drones pretty much infiltrate the airspace of multiple different NATO countries. We're seeing them infiltrate the airspace of Norway, Sweden, Denmark. We've also seen them invade in Germany, Poland, etc., and even in the Baltic states. So there's been a lot of these drone incursions for them to be sort of mysterious at this point. So the big question is, why won't NATO admit the source? About 50% said NATO wants to de-escalate again, while 21% said NATO can't defend against them, so they're keeping it quiet, and 17% said that they truly don't know the source and they're simply ignorant as to who's launching them. So I would say at this point, I would say the odds of them not knowing where these drones are coming from, in my personal opinion, is slim to none. I think they know where they're coming from, and they're simply trying to hold that information back so that way they can have time to make a proper decision. I think that's probably what they're doing here, because we have heard that this Russian ship, which is right near the coast of Denmark and is moving around actively, that ship was there well before it was reported in the public. So I'm not accusing Denmark of concealing that information. But at the same time, though, surely they knew that ship was there before the public learned about it. I would have guessed they probably did, and the public didn't hear about it until later. So to me, it seems like NATO is trying to be a little bit sneaky here. I get the fact that they're trying to make a decision, but at the same time, though, how can Germany, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, how can all these countries combined not figure out where these drones are coming from, considering all the millions and millions of dollars of detection equipment that every single one of these countries have? That seems unbelievable to me, that we can't find the source of these drones. So I would say they probably know. That's my guess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would also believe with the 17%, they don't really know the source, because if they knew the source, they would say it. The Polish said, much like any other country like Romania, that they were Russian drones that were violating their airspace, and they were able to confirm it from the debris, and they were also able to confirm it just because it made sense. I don't really know. Well, I would say that at least the Danish, German, Norwegian, and Swedish authorities probably actually do not know where these drones are coming from. A lot of people always think that militaries around the world, like ours, are omnipotent beings that can pretty much see everything going on everywhere all the time. The thing is, however, is that the military's eye, all-seeing eye, isn't always directed on where something is happening every single time. And much like everyone else, the military is made up of people, which have only specific attention spans and can only do so much. And I would have to say that they probably actually do not know where these drones are being launched from, and that is why they're generally not wanting to say it with 100% certainty yet, because the only other way that they could say it with 100% certainty would be to shoot down one of these drones and to start to comb through the parts that it's made of and to find anything that would note that it was made inside the Russian Federation or had any dealings with the Russian armed forces. That would be the only way at this point that they could confirm that these drones are Russian, or to find their launch points and then follow them into an airspace incursion like in Denmark, Germany, Norway, Sweden, and elsewhere. So I would generally have to be with the 13%, well, 17% as well. I actually don't believe that they know the specific source at the moment, and that's why they're generally holding off, at least for now, on saying exactly where these drones are from. So that would be my 2
But at the
cents.
same time, But at the same time, though, these countries have radar systems. We don't know the exact altitude these drones are flying yet, but shouldn't these drones be popping up on radar or something? Because, it's hard to believe that these countries have such a blind spot that they simply can't track these drones. And also, we have such a large amount of NATO surveillance aircraft in the skies actively looking in the area. It seems like somebody would have spotted maybe a drone flying back to a mothership or maybe some type of Navy vessel or something. It seems like they would have some type of intel. The fact that we don't, after launching such a large amount of assets, leads me to believe that we probably have it and we're withholding that information. But what do you think?
It's possible. I mean, it's definitely possible he could be withholding that information. But at the same time, if they withheld the information, what benefit is it doing? Generally, at least as far as the public is concerned at this point, Russian drones have confirmed enter Poland, which may as well be the same as any other nation in NATO. What would be the difference if they said it's guaranteed 100% a Russian drone in Denmark or in Norway or in Sweden or inside of Germany? What if, for example, these drones are being constructed by pro-Russian sympathizers within a place like Germany, and then they're being launched from German airspace within the northern part of the country into the rest of the region, or from Sweden or Norway or Denmark or elsewhere? They're not recognizable, they're not identifiable, but that's something that you can't really say 100% is the Russians unless you have just 100% verified proof of. And I think that may be the reason why they're holding off, because once again, they may actually be seeing that maybe it's some sort of a smuggling group or something in the area that's operating these drones, and they're starting to work on the behest of the Russians to try and close down airspace and cause disruptions. That's a little far-fetched, but still could be a small possibility.
Yeah, me personally, I would say the main reason that NATO would want to hold that information back if they had knowledge that it was indeed for a 100% fact that Russia was launching these drones is because the moment they say that Russia is launching the drones, that's going to put NATO in a decision-making mode. They have to make a decision because now the public's going to be putting pressure on NATO governments to respond to it. And obviously that would be warranted. If these drones are invading NATO airspace in multiple different countries, obviously the public's going to demand a response. And that's logical. But at the same time, though, if they keep it concealed and they keep it covert and they don't tell the public that they know for a fact that Russia's launching it, then they don't have to take action until they actually announce that. So I think it could be simply trying to buy time. They could be trying to maybe de-escalate. It's something of that nature, in my opinion, that they're doing this for, because I just can't believe it. Like, maybe it's like a lack of detection abilities. Maybe it's incompetence. I'm not sure what it is, but I have a hard time believing that after all these drone incursions over the course of a week in so many different NATO countries, that they don't know where this is coming from. And obviously Russia is the prime suspect, so they kind of have an idea of where to start looking, but yet at the same time, we still don't know.
I would have to agree. And also, I see some people saying, well, there's no reason to not shoot down a third-party drone on site. Ian Hansen said that. I'd have to agree with you. I think these drones should be shot down. For all we know, they're not Russian. They're just some goofballs that are starting to disrupt millions of dollars of commercial aviation and also the safe operations and safety of the citizens in the commercial aviation sectors. So for these reasons, just for the safety of the public, these things should be shot down. That should be the premise that's taken. I would have to say that we clearly know that these drones are Russian. I would have to say that with a great deal of certainty, in my opinion, these are definitely Russian. But we should take the justification to shoot them down. We thought they were just the drones of our own citizens. So considering that they were flying them stupidly, we shot them down. And then if the Russians say that was our drone, then our response is, oh, well, why in the world were you flying that over our airspace? You shouldn't be doing that. We'll shoot them down if they keep coming in. And then that's our answer. So it's not a direct, like, it kind of appeases at least the hesitant leadership in some of these countries if they do know it's Russian, because at least on a public level, according to our official statements, we just say, oh, we thought it was one of our people here in, Denmark who did something stupid and we just shot it down. We didn't know it was yours, but by the way, don't fly them into our country anymore and do that kind of crap. We'll shoot them down anyways, even if they are Russian. That should be the answer. Because at that point, we made the original statement non-confrontational, best way we could do it in foreign policy, which should ease a little bit of the stress off of these leaders that would have to make the call to shoot these things down. And second, it also lays out the precedent from that point forward that any Russian drones entering our airspace that we are not able to identify and do not have permission to fly there will be shot down anyways, and we were able to get away with doing that based off of the diplomatic wordage. That would be a pretty good way of going about it. But really quickly, folks, I wanted to open up y'all's minds to a little bit of imagination, because we were talking about that Rapucha class landing ship right here, and how in the world could it launch a drone? And I actually was thinking, and this is something that I might want to point out, look at the sea state within this area. Matthew, doesn't that look like it's extremely calm? I mean, the sea is nearly flat.
Yeah, it kind of does, at least from that altitude right there, yeah.
So this is something that's really interesting about Rapucha class landing ships like this one, is that they have a giant swinging open door on the front of their bow, which is absolutely massive. Huge, as a matter of fact. It's about 12 feet wide, or about 15 feet wide, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and it has about a 30-foot height to it. So this thing is absolutely massive, and if you want to, you can open up this front bow-facing door pretty much a cargo door in calm sea states, just like the one that we're seeing it in this film. If there is no weather within this area, it's entirely possible that they could just open up this door and have a pre-installed catapult on the floor of this Rapucha-class landing ship and just load a larger drone like a Shahed onto this thing and literally launch it right out of the front cargo door. I mean, that would be an absolutely absurd and outlandish sort of a thing to do, but it's not out of the question.
It does seem like an interesting idea. I honestly did not know that it did that, so that's quite interesting to see. I guess they could technically launch it from in there. The only problem is landing it back in there seems like it might be a bit of a feat of engineering to have that done. So maybe, like just to add on to the speculation here, maybe they could launch it from the Rapucha class vessel here, the Russian ship. They could send them over the targets, which right now it looks like it's Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and then maybe fly them over to Kaliningrad to land them there. That could be another option as well. Or maybe they're landing them in the water and then retrieving them. But that's assuming it's coming from the ship, though. It could be coming from land. We're just not sure.
But here's something I'm thinking though, because if you look at the schematics or generally the layout of a Rapucha, there is a decent probability they could be operating this entirely from the ship, because they have a rear loading door back here, they have a front loading door up there, and they have a giant cargo hatch on the bow. So what I'm thinking is, if we wanted to go absolutely overboard, let's come up with every single plausible way we could operate drones from this sort of a ship. You could open up this bow facing door, once again seen here, and this gives you a bit of a scale as to how large that door is, and you can launch drones with about the suspected wingspan we believe they have out of a door about that big. I mean, once they are launched from a catapult, and if they're at that size, their flight right off of the exit from the catapult is fairly stable. So if you angle it correctly, you can shoot a drone straight out the front of the ship if the sea stays calm and it's not in rough waves. That drone can then fly to wherever it goes and then return back. And if you look at that bow deck of a Rapucha class landing ship, let me go get a better picture to show that. Let's see, right about here. This is a pretty good one. There's this giant cargo hatch right there. If you flew a drone at the bow of this ship anywhere along this area and you had some sort of a arresting net set up, and let me go show y'all an arresting net on an aircraft carrier.
Also, by the way, I'm seeing people say you're giving Russia way too much credit. This is way too complicated for the Russians. I'll be honest with you, it's starting to get into the realm of like this might be over the Russians' pay grade a little bit. It's possible, but at the same time, this is like complex. And for the Russians to pull this off in the midst of failing in their economy, failing on the front lines of Ukraine, it seems pretty like it might be a little far-fetched.
I would say that's probably not. I mean, this is something that would be pretty cheap and easy to do. It requires practically no modification, no additional cost. They just take a catapult they'd use on land, bolt it down to the bottom of that deck, and then use an arresting net, much like this one that you would see on an aircraft carrier, to catch the drones when they're flying back in, and then just open up that cargo hatch and use a crane, a small crane on board the ship, to just lower it back down into the hull, and then it's all done. You stow away the net, it looks like it's doing nothing, and it's just hanging out within international waters. If anyone sees the ship, they just completely halt operations until everyone goes away, and then they can roll the net back out, open up the front bay door at night, and start launching drones out of it again. I mean, it's not out of the question, and considering that we don't know how long this thing has been there near Denmark, it may have been there the entire time these drone incursions were happening, and what better way to get away with it? Once again, to put this out there, it is a Russian military vessel. You can't board that ship. It would be an act of war. So if NATO did find out that the drones were being launched from that ship, there's nothing we can do. We can't board the an and seize it. That's an act of war. If it was being done by a ghost ship or a shadow tanker, we could board and seize that vessel and cause further damage to Russia's ability to export their oils, which is already difficult, and to make money off of it. So they'd rather do it from there because the risk or collateral is less, because you can't board that ship without it being an act of war. And on top of that, they get to protect their shadow fleet and still make it a mystery as to where these things are coming from. It's a little bit far-fetched, sure, but I think that that's a decent, plausible explanation. At least something that sounds somewhat logical, at least to me.
Maybe so, but like I saw Miss Disa say in the live chat a second ago, don't they have the ship under like strong surveillance? And I believe they do. I believe they have this Russian vessel under very strong surveillance. So if they're launching drones from it, they would probably see it. So at that point, all they have to do, they don't have to simply attack the Russian ship. They don't have to do that. That'd be way too aggressive. All they have to do is wait for the drone to enter NATO airspace, then shoot it down when it's safe to do so. And then you can collect the debris and have evidence that Russia launched it without having to actually fire a shot at a Russian Navy ship. So I mean, there's other ways to handle it other than inaction. And right now, NATO's choosing inaction, which is probably the worst thing they could possibly do out of all the available options.
I would generally have to agree. And moving on out of this news, considering that we also, well, let me actually cover a couple of additional pieces of news that we have in the area. One, we have been able to hear that a Finnish drone is currently conducting a reconnaissance orbit around the area of the Baltic. It's a Together AR-5 long-range maritime surveillance drone that is being used by the Finnish border guards in that area. We also were able to hear that the Russians are flying an IL-76 into Kaliningrad, RF-78661, which is on flight from St. Petersburg to Kaliningrad, and we do not know what it's carrying. It is a Russian Air Force IL-76. But once again, we do not know what the cargo hold has in it. So it could be anything. It could be anyone. It could be people. It could be equipment. We're not really sure. Moving on out of that, we also were able to hear of a Russian sabotage vessel, which is wandering around, as we apparently publicly know, around the entirety of Europe. According to what Nexta has stated today, cited from the Financial Times, the Russian reconnaissance vessel Yantar has been spotted in the waters off the UK and Ireland. Disguised as a civilian ship, its equipment with gear for espionage and sabotage. Its main targets are undersea cables and pipelines, along with Europe's internet, power, and military communications, depending on those pipelines and cables. The ship has already loitered over strategic points near Norway, Svalbard, and the Irish Sea, forcing the British military to scramble patrol aircraft and vessels. The British have called it a growing Russian aggression. According to the Financial Times, since autumn of 2023, not only Yantar, but roughly 10 other Russian ships have regularly operated in these waters. The operations are run by Gugi, a secret branch of the Russian Defense Ministry responsible for espionage and sabotage. Moscow is mapping vulnerable cables so that in a crisis it can paralyze Europe's energy, communications, and financial systems. So it generally does appear that we have a Russian spy ship that's now once again wandering around on the loose, and apparently NATO is keeping an eye on it, and we've been able to hear that it's active once again. So, now that we've got all of the drone and air operations out of the way for the day, it is time for us to move on over into East Asia for a minute, because there's been some escalations going on over here over the course of the day, particularly about Afghanistan and the U.S. attempt to return to Bagram. As many of you all know, the President of the United States voiced interest in returning to the Bagram Air Force Base inside of Afghanistan. The Taliban have directly shot that idea down, stating that they will go to war for another 20 years before they allow the United States to peacefully return back to the country and continue operations at Bagram. The United States, in turn, has floated the idea of possibly invading the country and operating Bagram Air Force Base within a nation that we would technically be at war at that point. This has been something that, of course, I stated was not really a great idea to make a publicized event, at least as far as social media was concerned, as that would lead to the attention from multiple other countries to try and preempt us and stop us from ever conducting such an action, and pretty much meeting us at the head or completely defeating our efforts or purpose of doing this action by showing up in Bagram early. And that's exactly what the Chinese ended up doing. It turned out that was prophetic, nearly. A joint statement has been made by the foreign ministers of China, Russia, Pakistan, and Iran about rejecting the reestablishment of U.S. military bases in and around Afghanistan, and that is something that is now being stated by all four of these countries combined. And there is actually a little bit of a important thing to note about this. Iran, Pakistan, and China, along with Russia, have completely denounced any actions by the United States to conduct a operation that would reopen a base or operate a base anywhere in or around Afghanistan. If you look at this, they literally create a bowl around Afghanistan. Pakistan, Iran, and China will not allow, under any circumstances, if their armed forces can stop it, a U.S. operation to try and re-enter Afghanistan. And also Russia, obviously, will not allow any such operation, meaning that the United States would somehow have to conduct, if we wanted to do this, an air corridor from Turkey through Armenia and Azerbaijan into the Caspian Sea and then into Afghanistan, which would be pretty difficult to pull off, considering that the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan was only possible because U.S. forces based and operated out of Pakistan to make it in-country, into Afghanistan itself. This generally means that not only are we largely barred, at least by the air and land, from getting into Afghanistan, but this also is a Chinese threat and could possibly be met with acts of war if we attempt to conduct such an action against Afghanistan. They could try and meet us at the head and just directly threaten war over any sort of an incident that we try and create in retaking Bagram. This is why, folks, you don't want to make this sort of stuff public when we're working on this sort of a deal, because everyone can start to come out and try and preempt their actions. Outside of that, however, I don't really think it's a good idea to even try and return to Afghanistan. That boat's already set sail. We left completely, and there's really nothing that we can do about that. But nevertheless, a lot of people are talking about why in the world would the Chinese issue a threat like this, along with Pakistan, Iran, and Russia? Why in the world would they be so interested in ensuring that the United States never returns to the Bagram Air Base inside of Afghanistan? And a lot of people seem to be believing that the Chinese have a different reason, rather than just trying to protect the Taliban from the United States in this sort of inaction. Some people are actually believing, and at least purporting, that the Chinese actually are at Bagram right now, at least in a very small form, and are trying to prepare the base for some sort of an arrival of the People's Liberation Army Air Force instead of that of the United States Air Force and other forces that we would have inside the country. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So going over the results, we do see the question here says that China stated a warning today against the U.S. military reestablishing bases in Afghanistan. And obviously, Bagram is the point of discussion right now. So I believe that statement was directed solely at Bagram and the U.S. desire to go back to Afghanistan to have that base and occupy it again. So what are your thoughts? 48% said China is probably already at Bagram right now, while 31% said China is bluffing the United States, and 13% said China would start war over it. So me personally, I was saying this before last time we discussed it. The odds are, is the reason why the U.S. probably got very excited about going back to Bagram is because they've probably gotten some type of intelligence that China is encroaching on the base, or they have Chinese agents actively working at the base trying to install some type of equipment or something of that nature. That is my assumption right now. And right now, that's all we have to go on is assumptions because we don't know the exact reason the U.S. is so interested in Bagram again. But I would say I'm with the 47%. I think China's already there, and China really blew the whistle today when they actually made a direct statement about it and said they don't want the U.S. military back in Afghanistan. It seems kind of weird to me that China was so vocal about that if they really don't have anybody inside of Bagram right now at the moment. So I would say that's the reason for it, and that's probably the case. But I'm with the 47%. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 47%. I think it's fairly obvious that the Chinese would be inside of Afghanistan, because they have a great invested strategic interest to make sure that we never return. When we were there, whether or not we had a problem with China directly up till that point, we were able to fly aircraft into Western China the entire time if we wanted to, if a war had broken out. And that's a position that China really wouldn't want, because we were able to start attacking and threatening the Chinese rear flank for the larger part, rather than everything coming from the Pacific, which is what they would generally be working towards and expecting. Now that we're gone, that threat doesn't exist. If we return, that threat reemerges against the Chinese. They don't want us there. And the best way to make sure that we never come back is to have their own forces inside of Afghanistan in advance. So when we left a power vacuum, the Chinese filled it practically immediately. And we already know that that would be a pretty high likelihood, because the Russians and the Chinese have been officially courting Taliban diplomats and officials inside of their country, trying to gain their favor, and generally appear to possibly have. They've been providing financial incentives to the Islamic Caliphate of Afghanistan since its formation or reformation in the latter part of 2021, and that would quite clearly give an incentive for Afghanistan to return the favor that China has given them in the form of economic incentives for the Chinese military to be pre-based inside of Afghanistan at places like Bagram. That isn't at all out of the question, and more importantly, it's certainly not out of the question because the Islamic Caliphate of Afghanistan is literally on China's border. I mean, it's no joke on their border. Let me make it a little bit more clear with this map. You can see that they literally touch the border with China. This country is 1 hour away from the nuclear warhead facilities that China has. The reason why China put them there is because they felt that it would be the safest there, because it would be the farthest away from the United States. If we return to Bagram, we're only an hour away from those. So they clearly, sure as hell, do not want us back there. That would be a major strategic security risk for them. So I'd have to be with the 47%. They're probably already there. And if we said we were going to push forward with trying to get back Bagram Air Force Base, the Chinese would probably just announce that they're moving in. And the truth would have been they already were there pretty much the entire time, and now they're just moving actual armed forces into the area instead. But with that, We also heard further developments inside the People's Republic of China about their relationship with the Russians. And apparently, according to some statements made by the Washington Post, they're claiming and alleging that Russia is helping China prepare for a possible invasion of Taiwan by helping to train an airborne battalion and supply equipment that could be used in an attack on Taiwan. According to the publication, they have cited leaked documents, and the authenticity of these documents was confirmed by the British think tank RUSI. This seems to be something that certainly wouldn't be out of the question now that we clearly know the Chinese are providing armed support to the Russian Federation, that the Russian Federation would try and return that in kind, at least in an implementation of a doctrine that may succeed. I would generally have to tell y'all that I think China is at a bit of a loss taking any advice from the Russians, because if they look at the war in Ukraine, I don't really think there's a lot to learn from the Russians. They really seem to have learned practically nothing over 3.5 years, so I don't really think they could teach the Chinese anything, and if the Chinese are so bad off that the Russians have something to teach them, then they ought to just sit the whole war with Taiwan out and just forget about that whole thing, because they're probably not even close to being ready to kind of fight that war. But one thing I gotta say is that this is a fairly interesting one. We do not know if this starts to lead into the credence that they would try and coordinate their attacks, the Russian war against NATO and the Chinese invasion of Taiwan, but it's possible at this point. Also, by the way, folks, this picture that was used as a placeholder is one hell of a trip, because this guy honestly has the same facial expression here on the left side where my mouse cursor is as Xi Jinping, and this guy right here is absolutely tripping. Like, I do not know what he's on, but he looks like he's absolutely spaced out. Everyone else looks like they hate being here, but these two guys, this guy looks like he's getting ready to become the premier of China, and this fella back here, he looks like he's absolutely tripping. I don't know on what. But nevertheless,
I gotta admit though, even though we don't know their exact fighting abilities, at least they're good at drill. Like, I will give them that. Like, they're very, very choreographed when it comes to their marching capabilities, but we don't know anything else beyond that. Like, they could be terrible soldiers. We just simply don't know how they actually work in a real fighting scenario, because they really haven't had to test that out recently. So, they're good with the choreography, but how they actually work in practice, that's a whole nother story.
Also, I see some people saying that this is AI, and I'm trying to look and see.
Nah.
I'm doubting that, folks, because they all have 4 fingers, and I don't really think AI still got that part down, from what I know. So it looks like they have 4 fingers, and also those guns, if I'm not mistaken, are actually Chinese, and they're also all identical to each other, and AI is not really good at that. So this is probably not an AI picture, so that's what I have to go with. Anyways, beyond that, Matthew, what are people thinking about the possibility of Russia and China trying to coordinate their attacks? Are they thinking it's likely or not so likely?
All right. So it is a bit disturbing that we've heard today that Russia is helping China prepare for the invasion of Taiwan. I'm not really sure how, in reality, they're doing that, but I guess Russia is scraping together something to help China out. And the big question is, will Russia and China attack simultaneously? Will China attack Taiwan at the same time that Russia tries to attack NATO as well? So 41% said yes, they will coordinate their attacks, while 34% said they will act separately, and 19% said it seems like a 50-50 chance of either option. And this is a tricky one. I'm not going to lie. This is a very tricky one right here, because China is generally sitting back and waiting to see what happens with Ukraine and NATO before they pull off their invasion of Taiwan. So while China may pretend like they're willing to go at it while Russia's still attacking as well, I'm not really sure if they're ready to pull the trigger just yet. I think China's in observation mode right now. Of course, they're actively preparing for an invasion, but whether or not they'll actually pull the trigger right this second, that's another story. So I'm going to say they will probably act separately. It would make more sense from a strategic perspective to overwhelm NATO by attacking simultaneously, but for now, I think they will attack separately. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I think that they'll be attacking separately. I would have to be with 33%. Just because they're in an information and equipment sharing sort of a program does not mean that they're going to be working at the highest levels to coordinate all of their actions like some sort of a unified fighting force. China is going to be ready to invade Taiwan by the time that Russia is going to be completely collapsing financially. So Russia really doesn't have the liberty or the ability to wait for the Chinese to get ready for their invasion of Taiwan, and also bankrolling the Russians, especially with how expensive it is right now. I don't really think that's something that China could do. It would cost China about $500 billion, I would take as a rough stab at it, to support the Russians. The Russian military budget, from what we know, is at nearly $250 billion. And on top of that, they have to continue to support all of the civil functions of the Russian Federation's economy. And they also have to try and float all of Russia's businesses, which are about to collapse financially as well. That is a lot of money that they've got to shell out year over year just to keep the Russians breathing at a minimum for them to try and correlate their wars and get them to happen simultaneously. And so for that reason, I just don't really think that that is a definite possibility or even close to being a definite possibility, because China just will not be ready to invade Taiwan by the time Russia is even financially stable enough to start a war with NATO. Russia has a very small window within the next year and a half, most likely, to start a war with NATO before they completely financially collapse, and China is most likely going to be ready within the next 2 years at a minimum to be able to try and invade Taiwan starting sometime in 2027. So those windows just don't even align, even if they wanted them to at this point. Also, moving on from that news, we also got some really interesting news out of the Koreas today. They are returning to the news coverage. It's been a minute since we've covered the Korean situation on the Korean Peninsula, but it is once again returning. And this is something I have to tell you all a little bit about, because this is an interesting point in the history of the post-Korean War era. This is the demilitarized zone. Look at it. It is the largest nature preserve on Earth. Unintentional one. It also is the most mined border on the planet, and this area out here wasn't even laid out in the entire treaty. And this little area right here is the Maritime Demarcation Line, the MDL, which is a part of the DMZ, the demilitarized zone that many people would know about along the land border, but this is the naval portion of it. And this has caused a great deal of issues. When the ceasefire was agreed to in 1953, while the front line, or generally the DMZ, or the militarized zone, was established on the front line on the very last day of the fighting, which is where the border still is to this day, the Maritime Demarcation Line really wasn't laid out well at all, and it was fairly ambiguous as to where that went. And that has been an issue between North and South Korea for decades, and has led to a decent amount of naval engagements and fights occurring over this one island right here, the Squid Game Island. I'm just kidding. It's the Yeonpyeong-myeon Island. This one's a little bit of an important one, and the South Koreans generally didn't militarize this island for the longest period of time until North Korea alleged that they were, fired at the thing in the, I believe it was the 80s, and then South Korea turned this thing into an island fortress as a result of that, and it still is to this day. This is something that is still been a major point of contention even in the modern day between the two countries, and North Korea has attempted to pretend like the Maritime Demarcation Line doesn't exist in this area. Ondong. I'm not even kidding. Like, that's actually the name of an island right there. Ondong. Anyways,
It's an unfortunate name, honestly, I must say.
Man, honestly, man, I think that's what that's what some North Korean generals allegedly have been doing with the Kims. But beyond that, we have been able to hear that today, as a South Korean corvette entered the area, it spotted a North Korean merchant vessel that was trying to violate the maritime border. The vessel returned fire at the ship, firing warning shots across its bow, which resulted in the North Korean merchant vessel fleeing the area at all available speed, heading back towards North Korea. Ondong. This is one of the few moments, at least in the past few months, that we have heard of shots being fired from one way or the other at either side, especially in the Maritime Demarcation Line area. And this is a situation that we believe may actually turn into a larger armed confrontation here in the near future. The last time that shots were fired on the DMZ, it was fired at a North Korean platoon of about 30 men that crossed the border and then were fired at by the Republic of Korea's army on the southern side of the border. Under fire, they immediately turned tail and ran right back across the border to the northern side, but the North Koreans did respond by increasing tensions and the deployments of forces along the DMZ as a result. We are expecting that this sort of a situation will result in a similar sort of a thing, and if you think I'm lying and I'm capping, I just gotta say once again, Ondong I'm not. But nevertheless, with that news out of the way, it is time for us to start moving back towards Europe and to move on into the Islamic Republic of Iran. But before we get into all of that news, because that's still a great deal of news to cover, I've got to say, folks, that this has been another hell of a stream. We have reached a peak viewership tonight of 20,000 live viewers exactly for about 2 minutes. That's crazy, honestly. It's even crazier to know, folks, and I gotta show you this because we are very honored to say this these days, and we love to know that people find the channel to be of high enough quality and high enough note to be able to put us here where we are right now, if this thing loads. But yesterday, in the ratings on YouTube nationwide, we were number 15 in the country for the largest live stream on YouTube. And that is really crazy. I've got to say that we're hugely honored to know that so many people continue to find this channel to be their primary source of news each and every day, to the point that we are beating out literally every single news organization in the country, including that of Associated Press. Further on down, Associated Press at number 36. Further on down, Fox News, the entire network, at number 43. Let's see here. Some other channels like PBS at number 55, and so on and so forth. It's really a crazy sort of a thing to see, and I've got to once again tell y'all that at this point, I hope y'all been enjoying the first hour of our show so far. I hope it's been high quality, and I hope that y'all stick around for the rest of the news that we have for the night, because it's also absolutely massive as well. If you have been enjoying our stream so far, please make sure to subscribe. We are literally inches away from hitting 507,000 subscribers. We've been growing tectonically over the past few days, and hopefully we'll be able to keep up that kind of momentum and get on our way towards 600,000 subscribers here soon. But I gotta thank you all so much for watching so far, and I hope that y'all do stick around. And in the meantime, to get to quickly talk to a couple of you folks, we are going to be making sure to address 3 super chat questions during this little intermission here, and then move on into the rest of the news after those 3 questions. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right. And also, by the way, folks, I did put in the live chat just a second ago that there was a piece of breaking news. We did see that the Myanmar Air Force carried out an airstrike on apparently a monastery in the Sagajan region, I believe it's said. I'm not really sure how you say it. But they are in a state of war, obviously. So they're conducting strikes right now, it looks like. We do have footage of it, but it's nothing too crazy, though, because they're already at war. So it's not too big of a change, except it was a pretty large airstrike. So we might cover that in the question segment, but for now, we're going to hold off on that one, but that was a piece of breaking news. But jumping into our first of 3 of the first super chats, this one goes to Bobby43, also known as LC39A, and thank you very much, good sir, for that $100 support. And thank you very much, Bobby, for always supporting the channel like that. And he said, greetings from Milton, Ontario, Canada, and LSA.
And a big hello to Milton, Ontario in Canada. Where in the world would Milton be? Let's see, I would bet you money that it's down here somewhere. Milton, Ontario. Where in the world is Milton? Let me type that in. Milton, Ontario. I was looking right at it. It's right here. Look at that. Milton, Ontario. Let's take a look around. They got Canadian geese. It's Canada.
Hey, look at that. That's where they come from, by the way. They come right there. They live here in this pond.
You know, I've been hearing, Matthew, that these Canadian geese have been flooding across the border, and they don't send their best. They send their worst. When you get out a handful of bread, they bite your ankles. They bite your legs. The little bastards. I'm just kidding. I like Canadian geese. I think they're pretty cool looking. But beyond that, Milton, Ontario looks like a pretty neat little place. It's kind of like a normal U.S. town in a way, like the smaller town USA's out there across America. Really cool place. And I got to thank you so much for the support, Bobby43, and being among the folks here in the Lee Spring Army who helps this channel to keep on running and helps us to make it possible day in and day out to be able to try and cover this sort of news and to be able to make sure to keep our lights on in the background while we do it. We're amazingly appreciative of your support, and thank you greatly for being here with us tonight and enjoying it enough again that you would support it to help it to keep on running. So a massive, humongous thanks to you so much once again for your support and helping this channel to keep running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, folks, we do have one more piece of breaking news happening right this minute. I'm hearing allegations, and once again, I'm trying to get confirmation on the story, but this is what I'm hearing right now, that allegedly the U.S. State Department is set to revoke the visa of the Colombian president. That's of Colombia, of course, in South America. And we are seeing that apparently it's going to be revoked because the U.S. State Department is claiming that he stood on a street in New York City and urged U.S. soldiers to disobey orders and incite violence.
He did.
So, have you heard about this, Enforcer? Because I haven't heard about it.
It's something more of a domestic topic, but I did hear about it. I'll cover it really quickly. It's nothing, like, we're not going to get into the domestic politics of it, but I'll explain to y'all why this happened. So, the Colombian president who was here attending the United Nations summit held at the United Nations headquarters in New York City, got involved in a protest out in the streets of New York City right outside the UN Assembly, and openly got a megaphone and started screaming that U.S. soldiers should disobey the orders of the President of the United States and should generally just completely disregard the government of the country, which was absolutely
Huh.
insane. Like, when I heard about that happening earlier today, I was like, wow, that is going to have some pretty serious consequences to follow from the government. I mean, coming to our country and then trying to incite the military to pretty much conduct an armed uprising of some sort is absolutely crazy. So obviously they revoked his visa, and he's pretty much going to get booted out of the country at this point. Because I would even have to say, folks, regardless of the domestic politics of whether you agree with Palestine or not, or whether you like Palestine or not, a foreign leader coming into the United States and standing in the middle of a U.S. street and then demanding the U.S. military to pretty much overthrow the government is completely unacceptable, and not only that, diplomatically insulting, and pretty much making Colombia an enemy of the United States overnight.
And he's on video saying that, like in the streets in New York
Yes,
City.
yes, he is. Like, you can
Oh
find
wow,
those
I
videos on
haven't
Twitter.
seen that video. Yeah, I haven't seen that video. I'll have to go watch that, but I hadn't really heard about that until just now. So honestly, if that is indeed the case and that turns out to be completely true, the claim by the U.S. State Department right there, then I would say that sounds like a justified response. See, but nobody can come here to our streets in America and tell everybody to start disobeying military orders. That sounds very appropriate, actually. So I was about to say that sounds crazy, but actually, if that statement turns out to be true that he did say that, then that's pretty much warranted.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, honestly. Like, if you want to pull it up, Matthew, I think if you type in on Twitter, like, Colombian president or something like that, you should be able to find it. And if you do find it, we could try and show it here on stream. But considering it was filmed in America, we might want to be a little bit careful with that. But you can find it. It
Yeah,
is out
yeah.
there all over the place. And it was absolutely nuts. I see some people saying lock him up. We can't do that. All we can do is just kick him out and send him back. And also, on top of that, considering that he is the official elected representative, or at least what we would consider to be the elected representative within Colombia, I generally think that from this point forward, we're generally probably going to clump Colombia in with Venezuela at this point, at least with their aggressive posturing down in the Caribbean. But also, I see some.
Also by the way, folks, people were saying free speech much. You don't have the right, like especially not a foreign leader coming to American soil. You don't have a right to go out and tell the leadership in the military to start disobeying orders and basically inciting an insurrection in the streets. That's not permitted. Like that is not permitted, and especially it's very horrible optics that a foreign leader is coming here to do that. So yeah, that's not really free speech. If you think we should let foreign leaders come to our country, stand in the street, and then incite an insurrection, I mean, I don't know where that's coming from.
Also, by the way, I have to put this out there really quickly that you don't have a right in the country to demand the overthrow of the government. Like, you can say that, but technically you're not supposed to really be able to say that. I mean, even by the Constitution, one of the Congress's main authorities, or generally the executive office's main authorities, is to put down insurrections and uprisings. If y'all do not know, it's actually in the United States Constitution within Article 2 and Article 3, if you would like, or Article 1 and Article 2, if you would like to go and look really quickly. But at the same time, having a foreign leader come into our country on a diplomatic visit and then stand out in the streets and tell the U.S. military to conduct an armed uprising against the United States government, that would be like Putin coming to Washington, D.C., pulling out a megaphone and saying that the entire U.S. government should be slaughtered on spot. We're obviously not going to allow that. I mean, like, that's not even a question of free speech. The guy is here on a diplomatic visit, which is supposed to be a diplomatic visit of goodwill, and he's operating in bad faith, demanding the overthrow of the government that approved his visit to the United States. That's not really a free speech question. If you don't like something that the government's doing, you 100% have the ability and right in this country to disagree with anything that the government's doing. But generally demanding for the overthrow of the government in any sort of an armed or violent way generally is something that isn't allowed even under the premise of the First Amendment, and you can clearly see through a load of Supreme Court rulings, precedents, and laws that that's not really the case. So, I hope that addresses that somewhat well, at least from my end, but a president of a foreign country...
I think there's only one way to deal with it. Honestly, there's only one way to deal with it. I think the Colombian president's going to have to apologize publicly, and on top of that, he can make up for it by sending 50 tons of his finest Colombian coffee. That should make up for it, and I think that should smooth things over.
And I would have to say, hopefully that would smooth it over. But let me see, folks. I want to find this really quickly for y'all because I know a lot of people would like to say, "Oh, I think it's this, I think it's that," as far as the what he said and whether it's loud or not. It generally isn't. We could find a law on that or a statute to show y'all that clearly states that that cannot happen. But generally, I can just tell y'all that considering the guy is not an American citizen, he is not an asylee or anyone else who's legally allowed in the United States for a long-term duration and considered to have the same rights and privileges as a U.S. citizen, and also due to the fact that he is here on a diplomatic visa for a diplomatic visit to the United States, which would be assumed that he is the representative of his nation and he's operating in a sense of diplomatic goodwill, demanding the overthrow of the government in the United States, or just generally the military conducting a mutiny, military-wide, that's not diplomatic goodwill. That's diplomatic bad faith. And that is not allowed under any sort of a diplomatic visit. I mean, if Putin had come here to the United States in Anchorage, and he had ended up chucking a grenade at someone that was involved in the meeting in Elmendorf, I mean, quite clearly, everyone isn't going to go, well, I mean, maybe we ought to put him in court. Like, no, he's probably going to be detained, and then probably, some unfortunate would happen to him right after that. That sort of a thing isn't really allowed. And also, that's incredibly rude for someone to come to on a visit to the United States as a representative of their country on an act of what's supposed to be good faith, and then demand an overthrow of the government. I mean, that's just absolutely absurd in every degree.
Yeah, honestly, it's top tier stupid. Actually, it's like, who the hell's got the audacity to go to somebody else's country and then start saying crazy things out in the street like that in the middle of New York City and in one of the biggest cities in the country? That's just really really stupid right there.
And he was railing against the U.S. and the UN General Assembly, which is something that you can do. Like, it's the UN General Assembly. You can say whatever you want in your speech, but he was railing against the U.S. He said Americans are just fat and lazy and stupid and all sorts of deals. And I was like, man, that's really something. I didn't really think the Colombian president thought like that about the United States. And then he went right outside and started demanding for the overthrow of the government. I was like, okay, that's a little wild. I've never seen that happen before. But anyways, with that, it's time for us to
Also, by the way, I see people mentioning diplomatic immunity. He didn't commit a crime, so I mean, it has nothing to do with diplomatic immunity. If he was accused of a crime, that would come into play. But if he's just said some things that pissed the U.S. government off because he's calling for if he did indeed call for the overthrow, I'm not sure exactly what he said. I didn't hear the video, but if he did that and he's having his visa revoked, that's not criminal. That's just the government deciding to revoke his visa. So nothing like that.
Also, by the way, just to give you all the direct words that he said that the soldiers in the American army should lay down their arms and no longer listen to any orders given to them by the government of the United States. That was what he said, pretty much advocating for an entire mutiny or some sort of rebellion within the military. That's the way you could really perceive that. And that's something you're not supposed to do on a diplomatic visit to a country at all, like ever. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one.
All right, so our second super chat here goes to none other than H.H. Madsen, who puts in a $100 donation. And thank you very much, H.H., for that $100 support. We do appreciate that. And they said, guys, the Danish government did listen to what you guys said yesterday. 2 warships were deployed, and the F-342 right outside of CPH. The other warship, F-363, is located near the Great Belt Bridge. And so, guys, be nice to us today, LOL. And Madsen. And also, by the way, I want to make this clear, Madsen. I know, I sound like I'm being critical of Denmark. I sympathize with the decision they're trying to make right now. I get the fact that it's a tough decision. I just personally believe the right course of action is to take a strong, very aggressive approach against Russia if it's proven that Russia's launching these drones. So I sympathize with the Danish while they're having a hard time with this decision. But at the same time, though, I think they're making a mistake strategically by not shooting the stuff down. But I got a lot of love for the Danes, though. I got respect for the Danish. I've always liked Denmark as a country. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say Denmark is a really cool country and a really pretty one at that. And I never whenever we get heated on air, I have absolutely not a bad bone in my body for the United States. I love the country. I'm a patriot, or any of our allies for that matter. I find all of our allies to have their own value and worth in their own special ways that contribute to our alliance and economic prosperity as a whole, including Denmark, especially considering that we have a joint agreement to operate bases inside of Denmark, actually inside of the Danish territory of Greenland, to be able to look over the Arctic and make sure that the Russians aren't trying to kill us all. So I find the relationship with Denmark to be incredibly beneficial. It's good to hear that the Danish are trying to take some forward steps to defend their skies, but I also want you to know I have no bad will towards the Danes. It's great to hear that they're taking positive steps forward, and I also understand and empathize with the tough call that they have to make to shoot down these drones, definitely knowing that they are Russian, and that a lot of people would be very hesitant about making that sort of call and decision. It's really easy for us to say it because we're not in that seat. We're not in the hot seat where you have to make that call. But I'm sure that it's very difficult for Danish leadership to make that call, considering they're ones in the chair that have to actually make it. So I can 100% empathize with them and understand completely where they're coming from with that. But it is good to hear that they're working towards taking a stand and not only defending themselves, but making a stance for the entirety of our alliance. Denmark can actually lead the way in this situation, and if they do, I think that they would go down in history as making the right call. Also, the Danish have Lego, so I can't hate y'all because Lego is like the coolest thing on earth.
Yeah, they got that Lego. I'll tell you what. Yeah, I think Lego means play well in Danish. I think I'm pretty sure. I got that from James May, by the way. So if it's wrong, I'm going to blame James May for it. But also at the same time, though, maybe they can simply build brand new air defenses out of Lego. Maybe that's something they can do. That's a nice cheap material to build equipment out of. So they could try that.
Yeah, I mean, that would be really cool, actually. And I gotta say, Denmark is a beautiful country. One day I would love to come here and take a look around and take a visit to Denmark. It's a beautiful, really cool country with a great deal of history, actually. But of course, I have no ill will towards the Danes. I like y'all. I think y'all are pretty cool. And also, the Battle of Jutland happened around here, right off of the coast. And that was one of the most historic naval battles ever in European history. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the third to last question. Well, actually, the final question in this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news.
All right, and this one goes to Andrew Abarbro. And thank you very much, Andrew, for that $100 support right there. And we appreciate that very much. And he said, okay, thinking this is the way, not really what you think, but possibly what you feel, or maybe neither, or either, or maybe it's exactly what you believe, or maybe not. Maybe good, maybe bad, maybe good is maybe bad, maybe bad is maybe good. But thank you very much, Andrew, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
Some people say, but beyond that, I gotta say a huge thanks to you for the support, Andrew Barbaro. And I gotta say that is the disclaimer of disclaimers right there. That is Mr. Disclaimer itself. And I gotta say, a humongous thanks to you for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who have helped to make this channel possible for years and help us to keep this thing running. And I gotta say that we are massively appreciative and thankful for your support because folks like you have been helping this channel to keep on rolling for years and hopefully will help us to keep it rolling well on into the future. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the rest of the news for the night. And also, I do want to give one more disclaimer to this because I've seen some people making comments in the chat about it, explaining why the Colombian president is having his visa revoked is not political. That is the action that he took and the response that was given. As far as it goes with the United States of America, Americans inside of this country have a right under the First Amendment to generally say whatever they want to, whether they agree or disagree with the government, whether they want to make fun of the president or absolutely adore and love the president. You have the right to do all those things. But a foreign leader coming to the United States of America on a diplomatic visa, on a diplomatic mission of goodwill to the United Nations, is not allowed to go out into the streets of a major city, the largest city in the United States of America, and openly demand for the U.S. military to conduct a mutiny against the government and lay down their arms and no longer listen to U.S. governmental leadership. That is something that is not allowed. That's not a First Amendment protected right. That guy doesn't even have any First Amendment protections. He's on a diplomatic mission on a diplomatic visa in the United States. So he doesn't have a right to do that. And he also doesn't have a right to demand an insurrection against the U.S. government. Actually, as a matter of fact, really nobody does, even here in the United States of America. And we can go and pull up the constitutional law on that later and show that that is the case, but that guy certainly doesn't because he's not even from the United States of America and he's on a diplomatic mission in the United States on a diplomatic visa. And considering that he's acting in bad faith, and that's clearly not an act of diplomacy, his visa can be revoked and he can be sent back. But moving on out of that, and on into the rest of the news for the night, we do have significant news coming out of the Islamic Republic of Iran, as we were able to hear that they have turned a leaf. They are stating that they will remain in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. This is right after, 2 weeks ago, they were going to hold a vote in the Iranian parliament to remove themselves from the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It appears that things are turning around. But 2 hours later, they then warned of further escalations, stating that the imminent implementation of sanctions against Iran has actively and intently paved the way for dangerous escalation. So, luckily, we know that they won't be making nuclear weapons. They did state that they'll be in the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and we know that their word is law. If the Iranians say that they're not creating a nuclear weapon, they're not creating a nuclear weapon. We all know that for sure. Meanwhile, down at Pickaxe Mountain, they're just weirdly conducting some tunnel digging operations right next to the uranium enrichment plant.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting right there, isn't it? I guess you could say, I ho, off to work to go. But honestly, though, this is a bad place to go work right here at Pickaxe Mountain, a very bad place. Isn't this the place when the B-2 bombers from America was sent in to go strike Natanz? They actually missed Pickaxe Mountain? Like, they didn't actually go and hit this spot because they didn't know about it, or at least they claimed they didn't know about it?
We quote unquote didn't know about it, although it literally was right next to the Fordo facility, well, the Natanz facility. So a little bit odd that we would say that because, I like this is something that I didn't realize until later because we didn't see it either, but I would assume the Department of Defense would know about it. Let me go here to the Fordo enrichment plant and let me show you this. Look, it's the Fordo uranium enrichment plant. Look, an old Iranian enrichment plant. And then down here, this is what we actually bombed. And it had a series of tunnels, much like Pickaxe Mountain, that went into the mountain, and that's where the centrifuges were from what we knew. But there was also this facility as well. And we could have said that this was the enrichment plant here and bombed this instead. And we did bomb it. It was with a smaller ordnance. But we also hit this as well. So when we go down to Natanz, which is, let's see here. It's right here. Here we are. When we go out down here to Natanz, you can see this facility here. You can literally see a road come off of this roadway right here, drive past this tailing site, where there's clearly some sort of excavation going on, and quite a amount of dump trucks as well. You can see one right there, and multiples of them going up and down the road. There's another one right here. And then we follow this up here, and then there's a significant compound here, mostly of dump trucks and excavators, if you notice. You can clearly see them all, and also concrete mixers right here, which clearly is showing that they're doing some construction. And then follow those roads up to this giant tailing site, which is clearly showing they're digging something. And then we can go right into these tunnel entrances right here. So I'll be honest with you all, while we missed it on the channel, and generally we do quite well at pointing out stuff that no one else sees or notices, we're not the Department of Defense. You would expect that they would have seen it and been like, why do these roads weirdly go up into the mountains right south of this nuclear facility and then just disappear into the mountainside, clearly into tunnels, which you can see right there. Like, you would think that they would have asked that sort of a question and they would have figured out what it was, but apparently they didn't. But now we know from this satellite proof that they are working hard at this facility. They built a new security wall along the northwestern side, and they've also started to build up a significant spoil pile, which is the rocks and debris that they're digging out and having to get out of the area so that way they can make usable rooms inside the mountain to operate their centrifuges in. So they're clearly expanding the centrifugal operations at the Natanz uranium enrichment plant, and apparently, while most of the enrichment campus is still going to be down here at the main site here in Natanz, the actual centrifuges will be hidden in the side of this mountain, making sure that they can't be hit again, and they might be built at a deep enough level that not even a massive ordnance penetrator, the MOP, or the GBU-54 might be able to not really reach them. So it does appear that the Iranians are certainly working on some sort of a nuclear weapons program, and also to counter the folks who say that the Iranians clearly aren't working on nuclear weapons, let me ask this. What peaceful country in the world who states that they are a goody two-shoes, Boy Scout following nuclear non-proliferation member would ever deny capping their enrichment at 60% only? Why in the world do they demand that they are allowed to enrich all the way up to weapons grade if they're only using it for peaceful energy creating purposes, which would only require them to enrich to 60%? And also, why in the world, as a result of that, would they dig giant complexes into the sides of mountains several hundred feet deep to ensure that nobody can bomb and blow up their centrifuges? I mean, if they were doing anything that was just normal, like nuclear energy production, why in the world would they be so scared of someone someone coming and bombing their centrifuges and knocking out their fuel production abilities if it was only for energy purposes. They could buy energy grade rods from anyone in the world if they wanted to. I mean, it's not that hard, but weirdly enough, they have to protect them from something, which generally suggests that they know what they're doing is shady and they aren't working on a nuclear bomb, because everything lines up to show that they are, because they're not willing to accept any reductions on their ability to enrich to weapons grade. And on top of that, they're continuing to hide their centrifuges from bombing as a result of that, which clearly shows they're working on nuclear weaponry. So, Matthew, what are a lot of people thinking about this whole situation, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So I was like, BB better not to blow up my nuclear shit. I said, I'm building a new place, sir. Pickaxe Mountain, sir. Raise the army, sir. There is no army, sir. But don't blow up my nuclear shit.
But anyways, getting serious though, should the USA hit Iran again? Because we do know that they hit Iran a short while back with the B-2 bombers, and they hit several different Iranian nuclear sites. But generally, the efficacy of those strikes has been debated severely. So I know there's a lot of different opinions about that, but now we see Pickaxe Mountain is being rebuilt, and it looks like it's in good order, at least for right now, and it's going to be rebuilt even bigger and better. So 46% said yes, the USA should hit Iran now, while 24% said let Israel take care of it, and 22% said no, wait until later to hit them. And honestly, I'll tell you all this. I think Israel ought to be the ones to take care of it first. Israel is a great partner of the United States, and let's let Israel be the tip of the spear this time. I say let Israel take charge of it, and the U.S. can provide support if needed. But since Israel, that's their region, and also we fund them tremendously, and we're about to sign off on $6 billion more weapons for them, I say let's let Israel do some work. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my honest opinion, I think that the United States ought to hit them. I would be with 46%. They have the Karam Shahar 5, which is now capable of hitting the eastern coast of the United States, meaning that it's not a matter of questioning, oh, they'd never be able to hit us. They can hit us right now if they got a nuclear weapon to be able to do it. They could slam down a Karam Shahar 5 into New York City right when they get a nuclear warhead and it's operational. As soon as they find a way to mount it onto that Karam Shahar 5, they can hit New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, any city along the eastern seaboard is now within their range right now. It's not even a question anymore. It's not even a hypothetical. They announced that the Karam Shahar 5 has that range, and if we were to just take that at face value, and we will, we are now assuming that if they get a nuclear weapon, they can directly hit the United States immediately for the larger part. We have to go in there and deal with them. It's not something that's just an Israeli problem right now. This is an American problem, and it always has been, because we always knew that they would eventually develop an ICBM to go with the nuclear weapon, so that way they could reach the United States and directly threaten us. So I would have to be with the 46%. The United States should go in and deal with the Iranian nuclear program by whatever means are necessary. I would say at this point, all the stops should be pulled, and we should just do whatever we need to generally get rid of the situation. This isn't something that we can sit here and entrust the Israelis to do. No disrespect to the Israelis, but when American lives are at stake, like say 1 million in New York City, or another 1 million in Boston, or another 1 million in Philadelphia, I don't really believe in outsourcing the security and protection of millions of Americans to a foreign country. I would generally entrust that sort of security or ability to that of the United States of America itself, the government that was elected by those people to look out for their best interest in security. And considering that these people are directly threatening that, I would have to say that we need to respond to that with the full force that we have available to go up against Iran, even if it went to some form of an occupation to move into this area and go into the mountain and ensure that everything's destroyed. We should even go to that length to ensure that this does not end up becoming another North Korea, and one that I would actually have to say is far more unstable than North Korea, because the Iranian government is sitting on a house of cards. They are practically collapsing at this point, or on the verge of collapsing, every few years whenever any sort of protests come around. The government is that fragile in Iran. A government that is that fragile in possession of nuclear weapons is incredibly concerning and has a higher statistical probability of resulting in an impromptu nuclear action either inside of Iran or outside of Iran on someone else to try and stabilize the position and ensure that power is maintained inside of their country. That is incredibly concerning.
Yeah. Honestly, the U.S. should have really done the job the first time the way it was suggested. I believe, according to reports, the original suggestion was when we sent the B-2 bombers into Iran to hit the nuclear sites the first time, they suggested that there should be a multi-week campaign against those forces. Also, by the way, Enforcer, can you still hear me? It looks like my Discord went out.
I can still hear you, but it was a little bit robotic. Just a little bit, though.
Okay, yeah, but the first time that they went in there, they should have handled it right the first time, which was to do that multi-week bombing campaign on the nuclear sites. They didn't do that, and they just hit the ones that we saw, and it was only a one-time strike. So I think they kind of messed up by not following through. But they have a chance to redo it and send them back in. But they could have done it in one fell swoop the first time. So I think that was kind of an oversight.
I would have to agree. I think it certainly was an oversight, and I think this is something that needs to be addressed now. It's better to address it now rather than later, because later we might not get the chance they might have a nuclear weapon. Also, really quickly, folks, one more thing. I had to go find this because I wanted to make sure that I did get this correct, just to show you all how grave of a deal this was that happened in New York City, because I saw some people even saying, no, he has the right to say that. Let me show you all U.S. Code, 18 U.S. Code 2383, rebellion or insurrection. Whoever incites, sets foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this title of imprisoned not more than 10 years, or both, shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. That was a law ratified into the U.S. Code in 1948, and that has been the standing law in the books since then. So nobody in the country ever has the right to incite an insurrection or rebellion against the U.S. government, especially someone from overseas, like the president of Colombia, an official representative of a foreign nation, who has now come on into the country, stepped foot in the country, and then made a statement like this. As a matter of fact, on the action he took today under U.S. law, under this very U.S. code, which is on the books, he could actually be imprisoned by the United States if we would like. That would start a war with Colombia, however, and we could actually try him for the crime that he committed on U.S. soil. Because he has diplomatic immunity, allegedly, but because he has diplomatic immunity, all we can do is revoke his visa and send him back to Colombia, where he came from. So just to once again make that clear, that is not a protected First Amendment right to call for a rebellion or insurrection against the government. You can even see that in the Constitution. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on out of the Islamic Republic of Iran and on into the rest of Europe, because we still have a lot of news to cover within this region. Oh, by the way, before we get to Europe, though, I do want to knock out a smaller development down here in the Caribbean. It doesn't really seem that a lot's going on right now. It looks like the MV Ocean Trader is now moored at the U.S. Virgin Islands, and we're also hearing that the U.S. is planning to possibly conduct strikes against Venezuela within the next several weeks. But it doesn't seem as anything that'll be incredibly urgent. According to what we know, U.S. military officials are drawing up options to target drug traffickers inside Venezuela, and strikes within that country's borders could potentially begin in a matter of weeks, according to sources that spoke to NBC News. These sources are 2 U.S. officials familiar with the planning, and 2 other sources familiar with the discussions. They spoke on the condition of anonymity, because they were not authorized to discuss the plans publicly. So it does appear that this is kind of on hold for now, but the Venezuelans did make themselves look like fools today, because they conducted an air defense test in the western part of Venezuela, and it was like Tehran, Iran back in the 12-Day War. But let's take a look.
And what are they firing it out there?
Nothing. It was just a show of force.
Oh wow! Honestly, that wasn't that bad. Honestly, looks like an invasion could be a little less difficult than I thought. Not by much, but it still could be a little less difficult.
Yeah, they got that Iranian air defense strategy. Just fire into the sky and pray that they hit something out there somewhere. That doesn't really work nowadays anymore. But that's what the Venezuelans work off of. So I think we're in a good spot, folks, against the Venezuelans. Once again, Venezuela doesn't have a good military. So moving on out of the area and on back into the more major news, we also got to hear that a alleged Russian cargo vessel, the Lauga, which is actually Russian, is currently near the Spanish coast in the western Mediterranean. It altered its course westward and then also brought its engines to a halt, and is currently stopped in the area. We have no idea why. Moving on from that, however, and on into the rest of the European news that we have today, Belarus did announce that they have Oreshnik hypersonic intermediate-range ballistic missiles. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Belarus, they said directly, Oreshnik is already in Belarus, officially. Well, that's
It's
interesting.
already in Belarus. Don't worry, people. We cleared it through the office of Fluffy, and it's now here in Belarus. The Oreshnik missile that barely works.
But beyond that, the Belarusians also, while they're getting a couple of weapons from the Russians to try and threaten the West with a little bit more, they tried to help out the Russians today inside of the Russian Federation. Many of y'all will know that the gas queues are getting insanely long, like this one we saw today in Crimea, as people stood in line waiting for benzene. It's not looking good.
Benzene. You gotta love that benzene. You gotta love that essence. They got a little bit of nothing going on down there. Also, by the way, I heard a fuel train got hit too.
Oh, well, you just completely blew away the buildup I was doing right there. Like, I was building up to that. But while people are in line for benzene, to get back to the storytelling mode here, while people were waiting in line for benzene, spoiler, they were, of course, having a little bit of an issue with getting fuel. And Belarus loves to help Russia. Belarus loves to help. I mean, practically a colony of the Russians, but they still love to help nonetheless. So they sent a fuel train from Belarus into Russia, and it ended up crossing the border at Smolensk, which I'll show y'all right here. Ah, yes, here it is, the double-tracked main line from Belarus to Smolensk, and the train traveled through, passing the station at Krasnoy, and then heading on down the line to, I believe it was this crossing somewhere around right here, or it was somewhere along one of these crossings heading towards the city of Smolensk. And on one of those crossings, something very unfortunate happened. Something tragic. A Russian truck ran out of diesel. Who would have seen it coming? An 18-wheeler running out of diesel on a railway crossing? It sounds coincidence. But the freight train barreled right into that truck at a high speed, slamming right into it, and it derailed the entire train. The whole fuel train, the whole kit and shebang, right off the rails. And then what was even better is that after the Russians got done just a couple of years ago laughing at our own disaster at East Palestine, they got a little bit of their own of an East Palestine. We call this one a bootany up in here. Take a little look at what we got from the area today.
Это поезд.
Why? That's a fire.
Oh. This person sounds very nervous about this, but they're not really putting it in reverse, Terry.
They put it in backwards, like not reverse, but we also saw another little clip of this fire. Listen to the sound of that bending gas.
Отцепляйте наружный остаток, начинает гореть. От хвоста всего лишь вот осталось.
And one last clip. This one is the closest one that we got of the fire. This guy was right on top of it. And man, look at those boxcars, Matthew, and those fuel tanks all on fire. Like literally formed a crater, apparently, from one of the explosions because they're all kind of like sticking at an upwards angle out of a crater.
Yeah, that's a serious fire there. A lot of fuel too.
Yes, a lot of benzene getting turned into essence. And that's the end of that clip. But one hell of an interesting occurrence nonetheless. And how unfortunate, folks. Russia is bleeding for fuel these days. They need that benzene, and all they get in return is essence. The essence of the smell of the benzene as it burns out of the tank cars and out of the refineries and out of the fuel storage facilities. It's like an illusion to them. It goes up in a literal puff of smoke. A real shame for the Russians, truly, quite truly and dearly. But we're going to be moving on from that. And it's time for us to move on into Ukraine itself. We were able to hear that down in the Uzhhorod area, there is a little bit of an incident going on. As Zelenskyy stated that Ukraine detected airspace violations by possible Hungarian reconnaissance drones. The Hungarians completely denied this, but we have heard of such incidents happening before, but we haven't really seen hardcore proof by the Ukrainians to prove that the Hungarian drones are over this region, and we also haven't really heard of any hardcore proof from the Hungarians to show that there weren't any Hungarian drones over that region either. So it's more so of a claim at the moment. And we'll be waiting to see what comes out of this in the next few days and weeks. Moving on out of that and on up into Kyiv, it appears that Zelenskyy, folks, we were actually joking around about this the other day, that while Zelenskyy was meeting with the president here in the United States, he was going to go to, like, the Smithsonian or something like that, and walk around and go, I'll have that one, and this one, and that one, and I'll have some of these, and I'll have some of those. And it actually turns out he kind of did that in the meeting with the president. He actually asked for Tomahawk cruise missiles, just straight up, apparently. And in private talks, Zelenskyy asked the president for Tomahawks. Zelenskyy reportedly told Trump that the advanced weapon systems could help pressure the president of the Russian Federation into negotiations for a peace deal. So imagine this, folks. Zelenskyy in a room with the president going, trust me, it's important for the plot. I have to have these Tomahawk cruise missiles to hit the refineries. They are very important. These are some of the most important.
Honestly, it seems like it was a crapshoot to even ask that, because it seems kind of unlikely that the U.S. would actually give Ukraine Tomahawks. Because isn't that one of our newer missile systems too, by the way?
It's about like 40-something years old. It's not the newest thing.
It's our newer ones, though. It's like one of our newer ones.
Not really. I mean, these things have actually been around for a little bit of a while. They're about as old as the F-16s at this point.
Well, then why haven't we given them before?
It's the fact that they're really long range. They're like 1,200-mile ranges, 1,350 nautical miles in range, or even farther than that in some instances. And so we're like, should the Ukrainians really have that? And we really don't know. And they're also fairly expensive. I think these actually cost about $2 million a pop, and about $4 million in export.
Interesting. Well, honestly, I think it's a crapshoot. Like, I wasn't expecting the U.S. president to even consider giving him a Tomahawk personally, because it's a very long range. It's still a newer weapon system, in my opinion. So I would personally say that Zelenskyy probably asked that is like, let's go for the Hail Mary and see if he'll give us that. And then he said, I'll think about it, Zelenskyy. Give me some time. Don't rush me. And he's like, oh my God, he's considering it. It's like, I don't know if he's going to give them to him or not. Like, I still have some doubts about it, but it's at least being considered.
It sounds like it's being seriously considered. We'll have to see if that ever comes into fruition or not, but Zelenskyy made a Hail Mary for a Tomahawk. We also heard that at the same time, though, to add a little bit more to the story, that the President of the United States is considering lifting restrictions on the use of U.S.-made long-range weapons inside Russia. So, this doesn't really sound like that it's that far-fetched anymore. It sounds like this is something that might actually happen, Like, it's a possibility with everything lining up how it is. Moving on out of that, though, and on down into the rest of Ukraine, we did get to see the Russian casualty report for the day, and it was quite juicy. Miss DC Keeper of the Record stated that 334 drones is tied with September 24th, and it's the 14th highest loss day of the war. Troop losses on the 7-day average have dropped below 1,000 again, and artillery and vehicles are also much lower. But over the course of the past 24 hours, we did get to see that 940 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 82 supply trucks, 2 main battle tanks, 14 artillery pieces, 334 drones, and that was it. Still a pretty decent day, not one of the largest days that we've seen, but it's not the worst. Moving on from that and on down into the area of Lyman, we also got to see Russian forces getting hit within this direction by the Signum Mail unit. Take a look at this. They call them the Signum Mail unit because rain, snow, sleet, or shine, they're asking you what color your Bugatti is. And oh, there's some Russians, and they're trying to pop some caps in that thing, but it went for the Ural, and it succeeded. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. This one's
They said it's a Sigma male. They said the male of Sigma. They said you can't have a male without a little bit of Sigma. That's what they said. And they said something else about Ligma, but we won't get into that. That's something there that's a little bit nasty. A little bit nasty, they say. Oh my God, that's a trip and fall case right there. I'm not sure what lawyer would want to take that.
Honestly, I don't think any lawyer would want to take that. Moving on down into Pokrovsk, we also got to see the Ukrainians hitting Russian forces down here in the Birds of Magyar. You see them flying on the
Those
drone.
birds, those birds. I'm telling you what, that Magyar, he knows what he's doing. Oh dear, look at these guys. Sleeping on the job. That's not permitted out here. They say that's a real nasty thing to do. They call it wage stealing. That's what they call it. Old-fashioned term. It's called taking from the employer and taking it for your own self. It's not a pretty thing. It's real ugly. I don't like it.
And I would have to say that it is a somewhat rougher thing. We can also see them continuing to clear out the Russian forces around the area. Inside the foliage, that is. And I got to say, folks, some of them are sleeping on the job, quite literally.
Whoa. Got a close up.
Oh. Yo, that guy was just kind of like mean mugging it. I got to say, this is all quite interesting. Oh my god, that guy actually hit it! But we're going to round out this clip here because it's about another 2 minutes of it. But it does appear that the birds of Magyar were quite successful in dispatching a great deal of Russians around the area. In the meantime, we also get to see this Leopard 2A4 striking Russian positions within the Pokrovsk front. This is in the southern side of Pokrovsk. And you would probably say, hey, wait a minute, I think we've seen this clip before. And no, it's the same Leopard 2, but it's a different day. It's today, actually. And we see them blasting out the Russians inside of some of the commie blocks inside of the southern part of the city.
You know, those Khrushchevskas are like remarkably resistant to tank fire. Like it's almost like they were built for that.
You know, it really is, honestly. That prefab construction, it really does stand up, you know.
They can literally gut the whole building, like completely gut it from the inside out, and the whole concrete like substructure will still be standing.
Honestly, I think we should bring Khrushchevkas to the United States and charge $4,000 a month in rent for each apartment. That would be very American. Moving on from that and on down the Pokrovsk front and on further and into the area of Kherson, we did unfortunately see that the Russians did shell the city today quite heavily. We did hear of a large amount of civilian casualties as a result of this strike you're seeing on film, which is very unfortunate to hear. It's clearly an incredibly large barrage. It appears to be fired by a BM-21 Grad or some sort of a similar multiple launch rocket system from the other side of the Dnipro River. The Russians actually deliberately targeted this area, and you can see some of the remnants of what's left over. Burned cars, a great deal of wounded, and also a couple of killed as well. That's the end of that clip. Very unfortunate to see. And in the meantime, while the Russian Federation is continuing to go out of its way to conduct war crimes and general genocides against the Ukrainian public wherever they can, we are also hearing that the Russians are trying to gear up to prepare for another false flag operation against that of the state of Ukraine. According to the Russians, at least from the Russian Foreign Ministry, Ukraine is preparing under a false flag attack in Romania and Poland, using repaired Russian drones to provoke a war between Russia and NATO. As Maria Zakharovka writes, citing the Hungarian publication Pesty Zrako. I'm not even going to say that. Kyiv allegedly plans to strike major NATO transport hubs in Poland and Romania using repaired Russian Garan drones, while simultaneously conducting a disinformation campaign blaming the Russians for everything. I would generally have to say that the way this is really going to go is that the Russians would launch that attack on Poland and Romania, bomb them, and then try and blame it on Ukraine and say that the Ukrainians were the ones who did it, trying to throw the blames on the Russians. A little bit of a sick sort of a deal that the Russians would even try and start working on a story like this, but this is the kind of sick depravity and levels that the Russian Federation's government will go to be able to try and put themselves in a good position at this point. It's really a despicable sort of a thing. But moving on out of that and out of that bit of news right there. And before we move on back to Kyiv, a lot of people have been talking about that Russian oil refinery and fuel train that were knocked out over the course of the day. And what will Russia do now on that gas crisis? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So if y'all can't tell already, which I think pretty much everybody sees this at this point, the Russians are having a gas crisis, which is just unprecedented. Right now, they're having gas shortages pretty much everywhere in their country. And it looks like Ukraine's still hitting the oil refineries. We saw one today get hit. We also saw the Russian fuel train get destroyed, and it was burning on the side of the road. So they're having mass destruction, and that's obviously not helping the gas crisis. So what will Russia do now to solve the gas crisis? And it looks like 52% said Russia will take it out on NATO, while 22% said someone will bail Russia out, and 13% said Russia will give up and hunker down and cope. And really, there's not much coping to do. If you don't have gasoline, you can't drive your vehicle, and that goes for motorcycles, cars, whatever. You can't drive. You can't get transportation if you don't have gas. So it's something that's going to affect every single Russian, and it's spreading into Moscow, which is literally the biggest place inside of Russia where the elites live. So that's problematic, and Putin has to deal with that because he can't just let the whole country run out of gas, or otherwise the civilians are going to be hollering like crazy at the Russian government and the Russian regime for not fixing that issue. So he's got to do something. So me personally, I'm not really sure if anybody can bail them out. Like, they might be looking to India for help with the oil, but there's only so much they can do. I mean, they can't like ship them all that oil to like sustain their whole country. That's just not viable. So they might look to distract by doing something with a NATO escalation. That would take the focus off the gas crisis and put it onto a new war that Russia started, which might save the Putin regime from getting ousted or questioned by a large portion of the Russian majority. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would generally have to agree with Enforcer Matt on that and the 53%. I think that the Russian Federation would most likely take it out on NATO, considering that they really can't stop what's happening inside of Russia. They generally have to try and find a way to force an end to the war, and they would do that by starting a war with NATO and then threatening complete nuclear destruction if their demands are not met at least half of the way. That's generally what I would think at this point. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion, and we're now going to be moving on into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1311 of the war. So without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні багато військових справ. Була доповідь головкома, також начальника Генштабу. Я говорив з міністром оборони України. Дякую всім. Дякую всім нашим воїнам, передусім в районах Добропілля, Покровська, також Куп'янська. І дуже важливо, що ви досягаєте результатів та знищуєте окупанта. Загальні втрати росіян тільки в рамках нашої добропільської контрнаступальної операції вже більше 3000. Більшість з них – це безповоротні втрати. Саме там росіяни хотіли здійснити один із значних проривів по фронту, але наші сили їх знешкоджують. Це важливо. Путін бреше лідерам, які з ним досі ще розмовляють, коли каже, що окупаційний контингент досягає якихось там їхніх цілей. Поки що вони вже далеко не перший рік змушені придумувати все нові й нові причини, чому терміни, які їм визначили, постійно переносяться. Це показово, що попри все, що Росія кажуть у світі, вони все одно відповідають тільки новими спробами штурмів та новими ударами по українських містах, по нашій інфраструктурі. Реально хворі війною. І чи можливо їх вилікувати – це питання. Єдине, що може примусити цей російський вірус війни зупинитись – це сила. Сильні рішення, сильна допомога. Ми говорили про це в Нью-Йорку з багатьма нашими близькими партнерами. Звісно, говорили з президентом Трампом. Президент Трамп дуже добре поінформований по ситуації на фронті, про те, що росіяни роблять і в чому вони намагаються усіх обманути. Ми говоримо з Америкою про конкретні речі, які можуть зупинити цю війну. Рецепти є. Важливо, щоб було реалізовано те, про що ми домовляємось. Цими днями росіяни продовжили завдавати жорстких ударів по наших містах: Чернігів, Харків, область, по Одещині, по Дніпровщині, постійні удари по Донеччині. Херсон – дуже жорсткі обстріли з артилерії та бомбардування. Росіяни повинні за все це відповідати, безумовно. Були сьогодні доповіді щодо діпстрайків, які проводять наші сили. Ефективність виробництва дронів, виробництва ракет, обсяги виробництв ми будемо збільшувати. Провів ставку, зокрема, щодо контрактів в нашій армії. Я доручив збільшувати контрактну складову. Були також доповіді Служби зовнішньої розвідки України та ГУР щодо російського виробництва зброї, їхньої промисловості, загалом паливного комплексу. Ми намітили нові завдання. Зараз такий час, що світ бачить, Росія перейшла в стан, коли війна даватиме все більше проблем самій же російській системі, російській економіці, російському суспільству. Критичне питання – не знижувати тиск на Росію за цю війну. Санкції, обмеження торгівлі з Росією, обмеження схем, які вони використовують і на яких заробляють. Все це спрацює. Очікуємо на затвердження 19-го пакету санкцій Євросоюзу, очікуємо на кроки Сполучених Штатів Америки, цінуємо позицію президента Трампа щодо тих в Європі, хто досі купує російську нафту і проводить політику залежності від російських схем. Сподіваємось, що в Угорщині почують ключового союзника у НАТО і будуть поважати президента Сполучених Штатів. Зараз ніхто в Європі не бачить від Угорщини такої поваги. Америка готова заповнити ринок Європи енергоресурсами так, щоб нікому не було потрібно навіть дивитись в сторону Росії. Близький Схід готовий працювати з Європою. Кожна нація в Європі може стати сильніше без Росії. Була доповідь наших військових щодо, відверто кажучи, дуже дивних подій на кордоні між Україною та Угорщиною. Наші військові зафіксували дрони, і це були дрони-розвідники. Я доручив військовим провести повну перевірку та наступного разу, якщо такі дрони ще будуть реагувати відповідно для оборони нашої держави. Українці зараз в Європі найкращі в захисті від будь-яких дронів. Ми готові ділитись нашим досвідом і з іншими націями, які потребують надійного захисту від дронових загроз. Ведемо перемовини щодо цього з десятками країн в Європі. На Близькому Сході ми запропонували сильну угоду Сполучених Штатів, одну з найбільш перспективних. Зараз бачимо, як в Данії, Норвегії, державах Балтії постійно інциденти з дронами Росії. За даними розвідки, для запуску цих і подібних дронів Росія може використовувати танкери як майданчики старту та управління дронами. І це не просто попередити, але реально цьому треба вчитись, треба робити відповідний потенціал. І сьогодні я говорив з прем'єр-міністром Данії, і якраз одна з тем розмови – це обмін деталями щодо дронів, щодо всіх цих інцидентів, очевидно, не випадкових. Росія намагається переробити Європу під себе, під своє уявлення про життя. А це таке уявлення, яке не сподобається жодному європейцю, крім тих, звісно, кого Росія корумпувала. Тому протидія, вона потрібна, спільні дії, вони потрібні, спільний захист можливий. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає нам. Дякую кожній, хто знає, що життя має перемогти. Слава Україні!
Herom Slava.
And with that is the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, here on day 1311 of the news from around the world. And it's time for us to move on into the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, what an incredibly fun and interesting time that's going to be. We get to talk about anything, except for religion, politics, climate change, or whether the A-10 Warthog is a relevant aircraft in modern air combat scenarios. Those are the four topics that we cannot talk about. That is the golden rule. But beyond that, we will be able to talk about literally anything and everything that y'all would like to talk about. Would you like to talk about where you're from, where you would like us to go, what you would like us to eat, what you'd like to eat, what you'd like to see, something interesting about history, some topic that you find quite interesting, maybe anything, quite literally anything. As long as they don't hit the 4 golden rules, we will be fine. And we'll be able to talk about them with y'all together all the way through. And of course, we're going to be making sure to get into that question segment right now. But before we do, one last thing. We right now have 15,000 people here with us live, and 156,000 people have been watching this stream up until this point right now. I gotta say that that's really crazy. As a matter of fact, Matthew, you would not believe this is actually more viewers, at least in total, than we had last night, with about 6,000 more live viewers, which is a little bit crazy. But beyond that, that is a really cool thing to see, and we absolutely love to know that so many people have been here with us tonight and have been enjoying the stream. If you have enjoyed it, please do make sure to subscribe. We'd love to have y'all here. We are at 507,000 subscribers, and we are growing by the thousands, at least right now, every single day. You could be one of those people. Hit the subscribe button. It does not hurt you. It only helps you to keep informed with this news. Hit the bell button. Ding that bell. I was about to say ding that dong, and that would have come out really wrong. So ding that bell. Ding that bell, and you will be able to get notifications on your phone, computer, email, and elsewhere of all of the upcoming Enforcer streams and videos when they are published. We make short war videos every day that we can, news permitting of course, and nightly streams every single day but Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. It is an amazing sort of a thing to be part of here on the Enforcer channel. You are a part of the revolution. You are a part of the change in the way that news is covered in this country, and that is one hell of a revolution to be a part of, completely changing the news landscape one day at a time, one story at a time, one reporting day at a single time. And each and every one of y'all has been a part of that for about 3.5 years now, and continue to be a part of it every single day that y'all are a subscriber and member of the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, it's time for us to get on into the questions. And also someone said, you were starting to sound like an AI bot. Yeah, I was deliberately doing that. I was trying to make it sound as automated as possible. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into the questions. Matthew, take it away.
All right, and it's now time to jump into what everybody in the audience is saying, starting off with our super chats and then jumping into our live chat questions and our Morse code decoders of the night. So we got a lot of really good questions, and let's jump right into them right now. And our first one here goes to Damien McClay, and Damien puts in a $100 donation, a Benjamin. And thank you very much, Damien, for that Benjamin right there. And we do appreciate that very, very much. He said, thanks for being here every night, guys. Long may it continue, but preferably in peacetime.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And thank you for the kind words. And I wonder what in the world the news would look like if everything was peaceful, if it was like every other time in history before now. I wonder what that would look like. That would be an interesting time in this channel. Maybe we'd cover politics. Hell no. I'm just kidding with y'all. We would never cover politics.
If you really think about it, there really is, there's never been such thing as peacetime. If you really think about it, there's always wars going on, always fighting. There's periods of low amounts of fighting, like low frequency of fighting, and high frequencies. Right now, we're going through a period of high frequency, a very high frequency once again. But it's never really peacetime at any point. There's always something going on. It's really a matter of whether or not the wars pique the interest of certain people, or if they don't. Because, for example, we're always seeing fighting going on in the Middle East since the beginning of time. So, that whole situation, unfortunately, isn't going away anytime soon. That's been happening as long as I've been alive, actually, at least.
Man, you were born too early to fight in the sandbox. You were born too late to fight in the sandbox, but you were born just in time to fight in the sandbox. It's time. We're going back, everyone, over there.
You're always in time for that. You're always in time for fighting in the Middle East, no matter what time in history you come around.
Honestly, man, that's kind of like the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland, where he's like, oh boy, it's time for tea. It's like that every single time in the Middle East, every single, historical era, someone is there and fighting over something. And I saw someone earlier say, before Israel existed, we had no enemies in the Middle East. You are like living in a delusion. We had endless enemies in the Middle East. If you didn't know, we invaded Iran in the middle of World War II in 1943. I don't know if you know that, but we did. Before that, we were at war with the Ottomans, technically, because they were a part of the Axis powers in World War I, and we were at war with the Axis powers in World War I. Before that, we were at war with the Barbary states, which were a part, generally kind of an extension of the Ottoman Empire, and they were inside of North Africa and a little sliver of the Middle East. So we've always been at war with the Middle East, even as a country. Like, there's really not been a period where we haven't been doing something or haven't been involved in the Middle East in some way. It's endless war. Honestly, the truth is, folks, is that as long as people are alive, I don't ever think that war will ever truly end. I just don't think it will. Because people are quarrelsome and people are quite violent. And that's nothing like that's. I'm not one of those people who are like humans are a parasite. It's just the nature of things. It's just the truth of it. And it's what people are going to do. Because even think about this, folks. People in America who are on the political extremes, like on the far right or the far left, they want to all kill each other. They live in the same country, and somehow they still all want to kill each other. Think of that, though, when there's no greater legal body stopping everyone from just going ham, and it's one group against the other. There's always going to be endless war. I mean, it always will be. It'll even be endless war, probably even still in a united Earth in some sort of a future government. There will always be uprisings. We'll have wars with our colonies on other planets. It will endlessly keep going because people are just like that. That's really the truth of it. I don't really think that there ever will be a peacetime because on top of that, whenever we think that there's a peace, there really isn't a peace. Like, if America's at peace, somewhere else in the world's at war. If somewhere else isn't at war, we're at war. It's always like that. And honestly, throughout all of recorded history, there's never been a time where there truly was peace. And I know some people are going to say, well, what about the Pax Britannica and the Pax Romana, or the Romana? The Pax Romana was only for the Roman Empire for about 400 years. But if you look over at the history in East Asia at the same time, there were wars going on during that period. If you look at what was going on during the Pax Britannica, there were still wars going on during the Pax Britannica. There's just never really been a period without war. It's an unfortunate thing, and war is a horrendous and terrible thing. But sadly, I don't ever think we'll be out of the news of covering wars, or out of the business of covering news about wars, because I think there will always be wars going on, well through our time and well beyond it. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here and we wouldn't have been able to keep this channel running and to keep this news running for years upon years. And also, I saw someone say something. I gotta crack a joke on this one because someone said, "Stop allowing men to hold power. Problem solved." What about Margaret Thatcher and the Falklands War? Like, what about that? Like, did that not happen? What about Catherine the Great and her expansion into the rest of Russia as it is today? Or what about Queen Elizabeth I, who defeated the Spanish Armada? Or Joan of Arc of France, who stood up and led an army against the English? What about all of those women? I mean, like, making it sound like it's like a gender or a sex thing, like men are quarrelsome, if women were in charge it'd be better. I mean, that's really just fanciful thinking and really fiction, honestly. Like, whether men or women are in charge, there's going to be war, endless war. It's never going to end.
Yeah, which you know who's going to be the first the woman leader in the world. That's going to probably set a precedent for that is going to be Kim Yo-jong inside of North Korea. She's going to be one of the first ones to set that example. Kim Yo-jong is vicious. She's not going to be playing around. I think Kim Yo-jong might actually be causing more hell when she comes to power than Kim Jong-un did. So, you went from the male to the female, and I think it's going to get more aggressive, actually. So it depends on which male and which female you're talking about, basically. I don't think it comes down to your gender like that. Like, I don't think that really dictates it, because women that tend to get gravitated toward leadership positions tend to have the same personality traits that males do. They get gravitated toward that same position. So I don't think there'd be that much of a difference, personally.
I would be honest with you all. I really don't see a difference, especially when it comes to governance and leadership between men or women. I mean, they practically, like, everyone's going to make the same decisions. I mean, you're in the same position with the same variables that play in the same sort of an environment. I mean, it didn't really matter whether it was men, women, or whoever that are in charge. And that's something that I think people are always a little bit amiss of, because there are plenty of historical periods where women were in charge of countries. Like, there were queens that were running nations. And even during those periods, they would either go to war with people or countries would go to war with them. And it just didn't really matter. So, like, like, I'll be honest, folks, I don't really like the whole, like, gender-oriented sort of a way of looking at, like, how the world works. Like, if all men were in charge, it's a perfect world, or if all women were in charge, it's a perfect world. Because there will never be a perfect world achieved through those sorts of metrics, because it's really wishful thinking. You would be as well off with a man or a woman that's just far more competent than a woman or a man that's just solely incompetent, and they're there just because they're a man or a woman. Is the truth of it, in my opinion. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to none other than, guess who? It is K-Dub Janky. And thank you very much, K-Dub, for that $50 support. We do appreciate that very, very much. And they said Enforcer HQ 3.0 is in range of In-N-Out Burger. An expeditionary mission will have to be launched. And great channel, and your success is profound.
And I gotta say, I thank you for the kind words and the support. And In-N-Out Burgers are in our future. Quite a lot. And I gotta say, In-N-Out Burger is where it's at. The customer service is sublime. It even makes Chick-fil-A look like it's child's play. The food is good. The burgers are great. The fries, pretty decent. Not bad. So I would generally have to say, I'm very excited for Enforcer HQ 3.0 to be in Salt Lake City. And I can't wait to be able to feast on a In-N-Out Burger and some fries. And maybe a shake. I don't know. Shake might be stretching it. But still, a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel running, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that quite well indeed, as a matter of fact. And I hope that with your supports, we can help this channel to keep on running and make this thing possible. And so with that, it's time for us to move on into the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Rick Galenchin, our viewer from Canada, and he puts in a 50 Canadian, and thank you very much, good sir, for that support as well. We do appreciate that. And he said, wow, 506,000 subs, and now 507. He said, congrats, guys, and the Enforcer channel has hit the big times, and 1 million coming soon.
And I gotta say, hopefully a million's coming soon. That would be crazy, folks. 7 digits, a gold plaque. Honestly, Matthew, I can't believe, like, we actually could be eyeballing a golden plaque some point in the future. Like, that's really weird to think about. I thought that was always going to be so far away we'd never even see it, but we might actually see it.
Obviously, a golden plaque. People have always wanted the golden plaque. Nobody cares about the silver. Nobody remembers that guy. They said, who's him with the silver? That's not what you want. You want that gold plaque. That one that you can put on the wall and plate your toilets in. That type of gold.
I would have to say, I'd say that'd be brilliant, sir. Wonderful, sir. And A, B, and C, and D points, and I'd completely agree with yours. Yes, sir. But beyond that, massive thanks to you for the support, and thank you so much for the congratulations on hitting 506,000 subscribers. One hell of a figure. I mean, we just hit 500,000 literally yesterday, and now we're already at 507. 7,000 subscribers in about 24 hours. That's a really crazy sort of a thing. And hopefully we'll be able to get it on up from here, on up to 600,000, maybe 750,000, maybe 900,000, or a million. Who knows what the future may bring. But still, a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that well. And, someone in the chat, they got angry. They called us sexist. And I don't really know how, because, I mean, we generally said that men and women are alike in leadership. There's no difference. I think it would have been sexist to say that men or women were better than the other. We took, like, the middle route where we just said, it doesn't really matter. You know, you can have, it's really better just to have someone who's competent, whether they're a man or a woman, rather than have someone who's incompetent and they're just because they happen to be a man or a woman. So a little bit weird.
Are you sure they're talking about us?
I don't know. I think they were. I mean, they didn't address it to anyone else. It seemed to just kind of be addressed to us, I suppose. And I was like, how dare you? I was like, we're not sexist. I mean, we literally just took the middle route, the most reasonable one possible, and the most logical one.
And me personally, I just care if leaders are competent. That's all I care about. I don't care if it's male, female, or whatever. I could care less personally about any of that. As long as somebody has intelligence and competence, is all I care about. I think people get way too caught up on those tertiary things and aspects. Some people are like, oh, I only want a man in charge, or oh, I have to have a female in charge because that's just the way I like it. It doesn't matter. It's like, is the person educated? Do they have knowledge? Number two, do they have good judgment? Number three, do they seem like they have the good bearing to be in a leadership position? Do they have the character to be there? Like, that's the main things to me. I'm like, if you line up with those three major aspects, then you're in the running, in my opinion. But people want to get caught up with, oh, do they talk like this? Do they sound like that? What's their accent sound like? What are they, male or female? It's like, we found out in the modern era that picking leaders based on those criteria is a horrible idea, as we're finding out, in the past times and current times, etc. If you'll catch my drift, that's not a good way to pick people. So we should go back to merit. That should be the way we pick them.
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you, folks. I'm just gonna be like straight up. I cannot stand it when people sit there and they elect people, not because of their policies, not because they sound competent, not because of their track record, but they'll just say something like, it's finally time to have like a strong man or a strong woman in office. I'm like, what does that really matter? I mean, that's a very superficial way to elect someone. I mean, this isn't a popularity contest. We're not voting for the president of a high school here, and a student council or anything like that. This is the president of the United States. That's like, if the woman has great talking points and she seems to be much more competent than her competitor or competition, which is a male in the opposite party, well, then clearly she should be elected for because she is much more competent than the man. But if the man is more competent than the woman, he should be voted for because he's more competent. He's going to be better suited for the role or the job. That's how I look at it. I mean, I don't really know why in the world people get into the weeds on, oh, I want him to be 6'2" and make six figures, or a man or a woman or anything like that. That doesn't make any sense. It's like, shouldn't we be listening to the merit of their points and their policies and deciding off of that whether they're good for the job or not?
And you know what really aggravates me in modern politics is you'll have candidates for different offices. They'll say being a man or a woman shouldn't matter. It should be equal, which I'm like, okay, that's a fair point. But then at the same time, they'll get up and make a speech later that day and say, I want to be the first woman president of the United States. It's like, I thought you just said that didn't matter. Why are you making a big point about that now? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, if somebody's being fair, they shouldn't care if you're male or female. So why are you then making a huge point that you're going to be the first female president? It's like, you'll get that title later, like in the history books. They appoint you that title by default because you were the first woman president. You don't have to go around acting like it's a selling point because it's like you just got done saying it didn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's just something that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, on top of that, just to speak about America, there are 50 governors of 50 states in this country, and a decent amount of those governors are actually women. And some of those women governors are great. Some, not even speaking on their domestic party politics, just on how they run their state, they're great. Others are terrible. There are a lot of governors out there that are men. Some of them are great. Some of them are terrible. So I think really what's more so the matter here is that it's not that they're men or women. It's more so that some of them are bad at being a governor and some of them are great at being a governor. And it has nothing to do with whether they're a man or a woman. And I think that that's the real crux of the thing that we ought to be getting down to there. And I see someone saying it does matter. And I would have to disagree because I've seen plenty of governors out there that are men and women that have done terribly at being a governor. And considering that a woman
we have
has
a female governor in Alabama.
Yeah, and we have some complaints, like not even about the party affiliation. There's just some things that happen in the state that we're like, what in the hell is this? And that's something that you could say about some other states that have governors that are men, and some other states have a woman or a man as a governor, and it's a great state, or they administer it effectively. But that's generally what I would have to say, my 2 cents on the matter. But with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, real quick, I want to address something else I saw. Someone said, when you guys hit 1 million, y'all will change. No, we're not. Like, that's one thing you can count on. Like, that's one thing that we are insisting on because obviously when people tend to get like a large, popular, following and stuff like that, I will admit, like, I've noticed it myself, people seem to change, but we're adamant on not doing that. And also, we have not done that. Like, even as we've grown to like 500,000 subscribers, I still talk to y'all all in the chat like I've done before. So does the Enforcer. I still talk to y'all off the air. Like some folks that contact me off the air, I still communicate with everybody off the air too. So we're not changing that. Like, we're staying the same. We're not going to suddenly become like, oh, like you have to go through this person to talk to so-and-so or something like that. It's not the way we do it. That's not the way we are. So y'all can trust and know the Enforcers won't change on you, even at 1 million or 10 million, either way. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat here. This one is going to go to Con LSA, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Con, for that $50 support. He said, Vladimir Solyev is now blaming a retired 3-star general, Ben Hodges, for Ukraine strikes against Russia's oil facilities. Please log on to Russian Media Monitor and YouTube. And this is literally a declaration by Putin's Project Lakta to the FSB to act.
Generally, they do that a good bit on folks here in America. Technically, we're on some FSB hit list somewhere to be arrested or executed or something like that. A lot of people are. But with Volodymyr Zelenskyy saying that he's just trying to find some fall guy, and considering that Ben Hodges goes around a good bit and he's got a great deal of internet presence and he speaks about the war in Ukraine and his thoughts on it, he's very pro-Ukraine. He was just kind of like the fall guy for Zelenskyy because he's a fairly public figure that also has a real military background. So that's generally what I would say. I would say that's not really giving a green light to the FSB, because he would just give that outside of Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy is just some talking mouth guy, and he honestly seems to kind of be a loose cannon at this point in Russia. But I do thank you for the support and help of this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we would not be able to make this thing possible. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next. Also, I see someone saying, I can't stand that because we sub for the personality and content. Then they change, and I can't deal with it. It drives me crazy. Honestly, that is something that kind of like drives me crazy too, because I've watched a lot of YouTube channels growing up, and some people, they'll hit 1 million and they change. They really do. Like, it goes to their heads. But the thing is, folks, is that with 500,000, like honestly, we could already let it go to our heads already if we wanted to. I mean, we run one of the top 30 live streams in America every day we're live at this point. We're in the top 30 of the country. If a live stream's running, we're guaranteed literally up in the top 0.0001% of all live streams running in America on YouTube any day we're on. Loads of people know who we are. We've been mentioned in a history book written by David Petraeus, who was a director of the CIA and former CENTCOM commander. We have the Institute of the Study of War following us. I mean, we have a decent amount of accreditations we could already let go to our heads, but it really doesn't, because at the end of the day, we're just doing what we do. It's a job, and I like doing it. I love doing it. I love talking this stuff. I talked this stuff back in high school when nobody paid attention. I talked this stuff when everyone couldn't stand it, to the same people every day, all the time. This is what I do. I just love it. It's fun. Yeah, like I actually would do this all the time. I'd be like, you know what? That's just crazy every day. And I would come up with all this deep stuff that I say on air, and that's why it sounds so well rehearsed, especially back when we started. I just did that anyways. Like, we just love doing this. We do it for the love of the game, really, of just being out here and talking about it every day. So we had never changed. I mean, we haven't changed, literally, if y'all go and watch. Like, the only thing that's changed about us is that we've gotten a lot better at speaking. But we haven't changed at all, at least with our personalities, from literally day, I think it was 27 when Matthew joined, or day 23 when Matthew joined, all the way up till now. We've never really changed, and we never will, really.
Yeah, that's because this is who we are, honestly. Like, what y'all see here is who we actually are. We're not putting on like a whole thing. And also, it would be extremely hard for us to put on like some type of like personality mask or something for like 4 hours a night. That would be, honestly, you wouldn't last more than a week doing that. Like, you would actually wear out because it takes too much effort to try to do that. So, our goofy moments, our smart moments, our articulate moments, like, that's actually who we are. So what y'all hear on air, that is truly us. Now, the videos, we get to sort of edit those a little bit, so we get to sort of like, chop the like rough parts out. But on the stream, though, like, you're seeing it raw. No editing, no nothing. If we say something stupid or something we regret, you get to hear it here, and also you get to see our like raw reaction to it as well. And also we get to respond to you on the chat live as well. So it is what it is. And also Scout said a bit pointless masking like that. And I agree. But there are people all over YouTube, though. I'm not just trying to like take criticism at every single YouTuber out there, but there's a lot of people these days that like build a fake persona, and then over time, as they get exposed more to like their fans, the fans start realizing, hey, that's not actually the guy we've been talking about. That's a totally different person right there than they really presented themselves originally, and then they get disappointed. There's like a whole falling out and all that stuff. But that's just not the case with us. We truly are just who we are, honestly.
Yeah, and also on top of that, folks, it would be difficult, like near damn impossible, to mask yourself for 3.5 hours live every night on air. This is a large percentage of our day that is spent on air, on a stream or a video each day. That would be so hard, folks, for us to actually go and mask ourselves for that amount of time, because most people will drop a mask about after an hour or so. And a lot of people on YouTube, generally with how they work their content, they are presented on video. So they do a lot of recording recordings, they can do a load of takes, and they can make sure to carefully curate a personality that they present forwards to all of their viewers, but they're totally different outside of that. Y'all all know this because I've always bragged about this. I do my videos in one take. When y'all hear my short war video like the one today, that is one continuous take with no cut in it. I'm just talking like I do on air. And then when we come on here, we just talk like we do normally. Like we talk like this literally all day. Honestly though, we do add in some stupidity here and there off air, like on God, bussa, and do stupid stuff like that whenever we're talking, sometimes just to, you know, joke around. But beyond that, we talk exactly the same way off air that we do on air. We're literally like this if you ever meet us in person. And folks who know us personally could attest we're literally just like this, no matter if you're in person or you're on the stream or anywhere. This is just who we are. I'm not changing that because why do that? That's uncomfortable. Why would I want to change? I'm happy with what I'm doing right now.
We even have some of our brawling moments on there too, like when we have disagreements. Like sometimes we get a little heated on here too. So you get the whole spectrum of everything. So it's all like in the wide open right here on the stream as well. Also, by the way, I want to apologize real quick. Michael McMahon said your audio is breaking down at times. I'm not sure why that's doing that. Discord apparently disconnected a second ago for some unknown reason. So maybe Discord's having a problem. I don't think it's a problem in my internet though, because it looks like everything's running fine on every other application. So sorry if it's breaking up a bit. I think it might be a connection issue.
And I would have to say, it's weird. I don't know what's doing that. Maybe Discord's having some server issues because it's updated. Like I shut it down and restarted it today. It's definitely updated. So I don't know why it's doing that, but I'll have to see if it's something on my end, but I think it might be a server issue thing. Because it wasn't having this issue earlier on air, and for some reason it's only having it later on in the night. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that quite well. And also, Lord Cog said, have you ever cried on stream? No, we don't cry on air.
That's the apology video.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. It's got to start silent. It's got to have like a camera panned at an empty couch. You walk in frame, sit down and go, hi, everyone. And then you let out a really long sigh. And then you go, I messed up. And then you start the apology.
Guys, I have something I have to tell you. I messed up. I messed up. Please forgive me. Oh my God. Please, subscribers, come back. Come back.
You don't understand my algorithm.
I can play guitar. You want me to play the ukulele too? A ding, 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 ding.
Wait, I got a better one. I'm sorry, everyone, that I took that video in Japan. I'm in my prime.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Not that one.
Oh my God. Or any other ones. Honestly, apology videos are the worst, folks. They are the worst. Every single one of them is almost the same. You know, there was actually this group of folks, everyone. This is one I remember so well. It was these three guys. I don't know what their channel was called. It's died at this point, literally. But it was three guys, and Matthew, they had the idea, we're gonna put our whole channel behind a paywall. So they just announced on their YouTube in a video one day, we're not doing normal videos anymore. You're gonna have to go to this website that we made and pay $20 a month to see any of our stuff because we're not posting here anymore. So we will see you all over there. They literally lost everyone, and nobody went to that website. So then they came back. It was like a multi-million subscriber channel that did this. And so then they came back and made a video and went, we're sorry, everyone. And they were all sitting on a couch looking at the ground. It was like
the couch.
It was like the literal normal apology videos just multiplied by 3 because 3 people were on camera, and their channel literally died like right after that. And I was like, man, that's what happens when you get greedy. You just end up destroying the whole thing. And I was like, that's a lesson to be learned, folks. Don't get greedy. The whole thing will come crashing down. That's not a good move. But you know, anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. But I still remember those folks, and I remember it was Moist Critical, I think, who made the video on that I listened to, because he was the one who explained it and showed it. And I was like, damn, that is rough. I was like, why in the world would they even think that's a good idea? Like, that's a terrible idea. But they were on a couch, everyone. A couch.
Yes.
Anyways,
Indeed.
We're moving on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Marion Deemert, who puts in a 30. And thank you very much, Marion, as well, for that very generous support. And Marion said, you have 19,000 watching. Amazing. And for coffee and pizza.
Hey, and thank you so much for supporting. It's really crazy. We actually had 20,000 people at the peak again tonight. And you know, folks, back in the day, and this wasn't that long ago back in the day, this was like 6 or 7 months ago back in the day, I think, Matty, we had on average at like a peak viewership 7,000 people who would be live, 7.5 thousand or so, something like that.
Yeah, first year it was hovering somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6,000. Like the first year, I think. The second year it was creeping up toward like 7,000 average. Third year it was creeping up toward 10 or getting closer to 10, and then this current year we're in, it's been jumping up to like well above the 10,000s this year. So it's been a pretty steady growth on the streams. Now the videos went from being small videos to like mega videos out of nowhere, and they've stayed that way, thankfully. So it's a little bit more exponential growth with the videos versus the stream.
Yeah, it's really crazy, honestly. But the streams are also growing massively. Like, we used to never place folks on the top 100 in America ever in the ratings. Then we went from that to we were in the top 70, I think, when we first started to show up. And then sometimes we would just be in the top 100 in general. And then we got into the top 60 and then the top 50. And now we're pretty much on average these days, somewhere up near above the top 30s. And it's really just bizarre. And I got to thank you so much for the support and congratulating us on having about 19 to 20,000 people live. Because I'll be honest with y'all, that is still crazy for me to think about, and I can't really wrap my head mentally around that. I run these streams in my head like there's still only about 4,000 to 3,000 people around, because it's really hard to think that there's literally an entire like football stadium of people who are listening to these streams when we're live on air. Like mentally trying to wrap my head around that, that's really hard. So I always just think, it's like a stream like normal, and just run them like we always did. Because why play it up? That would be really like not on brand for us. We do the same thing every night. Like we still do the goofy, stupid stuff we do every night, no matter who's here. Like earlier we were doing voices in the middle of the news. It's like we still do what we do. Like we make the same lame jokes or the funny ones if you find them funny. We do it all, no matter who's here. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Interstate Shelf, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Interstate Shelf, as well for that support. They said, hello, Enforcer, and you had me laughing so hard when you were talking about skin last night. Where did it go? What happened to it? LOL. And anyways, congratulations on 500,000 subs and next 1 million, and love the news. LSA.
And thank you so much for the support. And I was hoping that someone would be laughing at that, because that was just stupid. Like I was really reaching. I was thinking, I was like, I hope people are laughing at this, but I gotta thank you for being one of the folks that did, because I was trying so hard to make that into something funny, and I'm glad to know that you appreciated it. So a huge thanks to you for the support, and thank you for the kind words and helping this channel to keep on running, because you help us to be able to be on air and not just cover news, but also make those silly jokes all the time, hoping that people get a laugh. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. And we are on. Also, by the way, folks, another thing that's really crazy, and this is something that I don't know a lot of people know, and I think this is something that we think about as well, and we don't really say a lot, but we don't have a laugh track, and we don't have a live audience to know if our jokes are landing. So when we make jokes, we are literally playing into a dead room on our end. We don't hear anything. We don't get a reaction to any of our jokes. The only person who can give a reaction is the other person. So if Matthew makes a joke, I'm like that, like that. Yeah, Matthew's the only one who can make a joke and I can laugh at, and he's the only one that I can make a joke to and he can laugh at. So we do not know if our jokes are ever landing. Like we just make our jokes into empty rooms, and we pray that y'all are getting a laugh out of it, because we're just like, oh man, if no one's laughing at this, we would feel like idiots. And so when y'all send in super chats or just saying in the live chat LOL or put in a laughing face, we're like, okay, thank God people are finding that funny and they're laughing at it, because if y'all weren't, I would feel so stupid. Like, oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. I seem to run a news channel. I tried to crack a joke. They told me to stay into my day job. Oh man, I'm telling you. Oh man. Oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. I try and crack a shitty joke as Rodney Dangerfield, and then he sits there and plays a womp womp noise. Oh man, I'm telling you, and that's not the only thing that's womp womping. Oh man, I'm telling you, I was walking around the street the other day. I was wearing my shoes. Some kid put some horns on them and made them make the womp womp noise. I said, why do you do that? He said, because you look like a loser. Oh man, I'm telling you. Oh man, I get no respect around here. I'm telling you. Oh man, and I'm telling you, oh man, my family, they're real stupid. Oh man, back in the day when the Civil War happened, my family, they fought for the West. Oh, man, I'm telling you, that wasn't even a real deal. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, and it went even worse than there. Oh, real worse than there. Oh, man, I'm telling you what, it was real bad. When they sat there and heard about the Russians, they thought it was some sort of a Black Friday event. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man. Yeah, I'm telling you, they didn't know what kind of a Black Friday event that was. Oh, man. They thought it was like a stock market crash or something like that. They didn't know it was like a discount sale. Oh, man, I'm telling you. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a 25 Australian, and thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. We do appreciate that very much. He said, "Baba meow. The AI marmot is crying, and how does the sad marmot sound? And what's the fly saying? Bring on the marmot, and thanks, AI Matt." Thank you very much, Duncan, for that, AI Duncan.
And we will bring out the marmot. Let us bring out the marmot. We have to get the one by Jacob Lugosi. Oh, hello there.
Oh, hello there, Governor. How you been doing? It's been a rough day here on the farm. Even though we're not sure where this man lives, this marmot lives in liminal space with a little bit of gray and tan clay in the background. This man lives in a clay mine, and that's where he lives. We just found the mystery, folks. He lives in a clay mine, and he's clinging on to life because he has 3 plums left and 1 rock. And he's sitting still to conserve energy and calories. He doesn't want to burn them because that's a bad rule of survival. You want to make sure you don't burn the calories. But you see here, this fly right here is the only thing he has to keep him company. It's the only thing that he has left in life to fill the emptiness in the little noggin of marmot brain. But tell us more.
Aw, man, I've got to be honest with y'all. Aw, man, I think that political violence needs to come to an end. Anyways, the enforcers live at 123 Sycamore Lane.
That's a fake address, by the way. Totally fake.
It's fake. It's literally like an insert one. You'd find that on a like fake job application. But beyond that, we love the marmots. We love Alan the Marmot. Alan the Marmot is an amazing creature. One that is insanely ugly. Like, that tail isn't even real. The whole thing isn't real. The whole thing isn't real. I don't know if y'all heard this before, because we never actually have addressed this for, like, years on the channel. But this was a painting that was painted by an artist who had never seen a marmot in real life. He was just described what it looked like from an explorer who had seen one, and so this is what he came up with. And it looks more like a
Honestly,
rat.
this guy right here should have been a crime scene. Should have been a crime scene sketch artist or something, because you know, those crime scene sketch artists can't draw worth a crap, at least from what I've seen. So this guy right here is able to reconstruct like somewhat of a marmot from just a description.
Let's see, sketch artists. Let me go and get the crime scene sketch artist, folks. Oh buddy, oh howdy.
Oh my god. Oh, man. Honestly though, like I'm not sure. Like I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think this is a match. Like honestly, this guy's got a full head of hair. This guy's like balding. I don't think that's close. And then also, this doesn't even look close either.
Yo, is that well, I don't know the guy's name off the bat, but it looks like somebody familiar in that sketch.
And also,
what the hell? What's wrong with his face?
They even put the scabs on this guy.
It's like SoundCloud rapper right here. It's like, you know how they have those like teardrop tattoos on their face, stuff like that.
Yeah, but these are just scars. Like, but I mean, what a difference.
Is that a checkerboard tattoo around his neck?
Apparently, yeah.
Huh, that's interesting. And what's wrong with this guy's face on the left? Why's he got like a what's wrong with him?
I think that's a fungus that's growing on. He might need some ointment for that one. Also, man, I guess he has that checkerboard or chessboard looking like thing on his neck, so that way, like when he messes with like a gang in the hood, you know, they'll sit there and be like, "Man, I moved my knife to E7 or something." Like, I don't know. Like that doesn't make any sense at all. I have no clue at all why in the world someone would have a chessboard tattooed onto their neck. Like, that just seems really bizarre, if you ask me. But beyond that, the sketch artists, you know, it's you know, some of them are good, but some of them aren't. Like, let's see. I won't pull up anything further here on air, but beyond that, I do have to say quite an interesting sort of a deal there, for sure. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again for support and allowing us to have a little bit of Alan the Marmot time. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Cooper, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Cooper, as well, for that support. And also John Morton, who put in a 20 as well. And a huge shout to you, John and Cooper, for helping to keep the channel running with that support right there. There's no comments to address, but Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank the both of y'all, John and Cooper, for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but we're massively appreciative of y'all's support, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing here. We wouldn't be able to roll. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 super chat from Keymaster. And Keymaster said, special operation means how much can I FA before I FO? FAFO. And take one from the live chat.
You know, that's actually pretty true, really. That's honestly every sort of a diplomatic situation, effing around and finding out. And so a big thanks to you for the support, and we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. So what do we got?
And the live chat question is going to go to Judy from the live chat, who said, do you think with all this force of NATO, will that force Putin to back down, or is he going to double down?
I would honestly not really know. I think that the Russians are just going to keep doing what they're doing. I don't think they're going to back off or double down. They're just going to pretend like it didn't happen and keep escalating on their own timetable. Because that generally seems to be what they're doing at this point. But I hope that does address that live chat well. And big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the next one. Also, by the way, I saw someone say face tattoos for job hunting. Yeah, you know something? I got a word for the wise out there, folks. If you're looking to get a job anywhere, please do not get a face tattoo. Generally, most people won't hire folks with a face tattoo because a lot of people will think, and I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to tell y'all how to live your lives or anything, but generally someone who's like, you know, looking to hire someone for a job is looking for someone who's, you know, level-headed, reliable, they work hard, and generally you don't really look level-headed if you had the idea of putting a permanent ink on your face. Like, that's just generally kind of the truth to that sort of a deal. So it would be a lot harder to get jobs most places at that point. So don't do that, folks. Don't do that. I know most of y'all have already made that decision and not to do it, and that's a good thing. But to all the folks who have not made that decision yet, and they're kind of around that point in their life where they might, don't do that, folks. That's a terrible idea, and it doesn't end up resulting in good things. It's really hard to get a job at that point. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Frostbit Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Frostbit Jenna, for that support. They said, we better be careful, or Russia could tug their carrier out.
Pull out the Kuznetsov, like, the Kuznetsov, that carrier. This one, the rotting one. Well, this thing looks like a garbage scow, and the sailors on board would probably agree with you. Like, it's a terrible ship. Where's that one where it's burning that, it's that, I forgot what it's even called, the fuel that this thing works off of, but it's like some sort of weird name. Oh, yes, there it is. That shit. It's terrible, really. It's terrible, honestly. I gotta, what? Oh, this was a picture of it in 2006, but it's been in overhaul from 2017 to now. So it's almost been in overhaul. Well, it's been in overhaul now for 8 years. 8 years of overhaul. It's caught on fire twice in the overhaul, and it had to be almost completely rebuilt from the inside out. So I think they're going to give up on this thing, really. I think they will. But still, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And as the Kuznetsov says, but anyways, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Blito3WOT, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, good sir, as well, for that support. He said, LSA and dictators are fair weather friends.
And that's true. Dictators are fair weather friends. Because when the weather's fair, they're your friend. When the weather's not fair, they're not your friend. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And also everyone's saying bunker fuel, like bunker sea oil. Yeah, I mean, you know, that would be the one normally, but the Russians had like a special name and a special grade of bunker sea. And it's that one that I'm trying to think of. Let me go pull it up. Kuznetsov fuel. Mazit. That's what it is. It's this. It's like Bunker C, but I think it's even thicker. And so it burns even dirtier. I think that's the explanation to it. But anyways.
Yes, burns dirtier the Russian way. I tell you.
Man, they sure as hell aren't burning that essence. That's for sure. They are burning that straight up tar. But anyways, we're on to the next
They said,
one.
"Give us the thickest oil you got, so I can put it in the tank."
Man, they said, "Men, we may not have black tar, but the way our ship be burning this oil, it sure as hell looks like it." Man, that's what they're saying. Oh, man. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Herberg, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Herberg, for that support. They said it long overdue.
Hey, and thank you so much for support. And it's better late than never. It's not long overdue. We thank you for the support. No one ever has to support the channel, actually. It's something that people just do because they want to. So whenever you find that it's the right time to support the channel, that is the right time. Never overdue, never late. It's always right on time. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling, because you are now a part of helping this Enforcer channel to keep being financially possible every single day. So a huge thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Ralph Hernandez, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Ralph, for that support right there. We do appreciate that. And Ralph said, "Drone with folding wings on pontoons."
It's a sea drone. I was actually telling Matt that might be what it is. It might be some sort of a sea drone or something that they land near to the Rapucha and then they just lift it up out of the sea and onto the deck. That's not out of the question. A lot of aircraft did that in the Second World War. A lot of scouting planes, especially from battleships and cruisers, we used to do that sort of thing. So it's not really out of the question that they could just do that for a drone. It's smaller and even easier to do it with. So I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we just got a whopping $200 support from none other than Lord Cog. And thank you very much, Lord Cog, for that extremely generous support right there and helping to keep the channel running bigly. And we do appreciate that. And Lord Cog said, "As usual, thanks for what you do. And your secret is safe with me, I assure you." And I trust you, Lord Cog. He's keeping those secrets down pat. I tell you what, right there. He's got the non-disclosure agreement out here, allegedly. But that's what they're saying. That's what they're telling me. I mean, that's what people are saying. But honestly, I'm glad to hear that Lord Cog is the keeper of the secrets. Because, you know, every day is a secret and you got to keep secrets. But Enforcer, what say you?
Here's the secrets that are our secrets and will be our secrets, because secrets are secret. I think that was how.
Have you heard about Amelia Earhart recently? That's a real secret right there.
You know, I know that many people have been wondering, what happened to Amelia? What happened to her? We're about to whip out the files, everyone. Everyone's about to find out. I know that that's been one of the big things in the news recently. What happened on that island that Amelia disappeared at? Well, that's a great question. I heard. Wait, hold up, Matthew. Hold up. What he's really saying is, people keep talking about an island. Island? Did I hear Earhart Island? No. It's the no. I heard Earhart. Anyways, you're gonna release the files on that one. Everyone wants to know.
You see, it all started with Amelia. She wrecked on the wrong island. She wrecked on the wrong one. She could have picked any island but that one. They said it's not the island you want to wreck on right there.
Also, by the way, what the hell is classified about Amelia Earhart crashing her plane? It's like, why are they suggesting that something was classified about that? It's like, why was that classified? And why was it classified for so long? It's like, what is that, like 70 or 80 years ago or something that happened?
There's nothing on Amelia Earhart. She was trying to circumnavigate the globe. She crashed somewhere in the Pacific, and she died on some island or in the sea somewhere. That's what we know. Like, it's no big mystery. I mean, the mystery is where she crashed and how she died, but we know that she crashed and we know that she died. We know those two things for sure, but she never popped up anywhere again. And it's not like she was trying to hide from anyone or the government was trying to kill her. She was just flying around the world. So it's like, that was something I was like, okay, this is just going to be ridiculous. Because what it will be, folks, in that file will be, we looked around and we found some evidence that she did go missing around this area, but we'll have to look into it further. That's what their file is going to say. It's not going to be anything crazy like the Japanese killed her, because it was the lead up to World War II. It's not going to be that. It's just going to be, normal business.
I've just got one question. I've got one question for you. Do you know what the question is?
What is the question?
Are we seriously still talking about Amelia Earhart? Are you talking about them still? Like, are we not finished with that now? Don't we have more pressing issues than Amelia Earhart? They said, it looks like Earhart, but it's really Earhart. It's a weird thing with that last name right there. You really don't hear that one too often. You really don't hear that one too often. But yeah, the funny part is you really hear, really often is stay in good health by taking your zinc, and it'll keep your plane from crashing if you do that. And it's a good thing. It's like zinc. It's like something that you should take. And if Mrs. Earhart would at least have some zinc, it'll probably help a lot.
I gotta be honest with y'all. This whole thing about this island that Amelia Earhart went missing on, they've been talking about these missing people on this mysterious island, and I didn't know what the hell they were talking about, so I put two and two together, and I guess everyone's talking about Amelia Earhart. I know that that's been the big thing. A lot of people said for some reason that she died in a New York prison when the cameras went out. Really crazy shit. I don't know about that. But beyond that, what we know is that we got the files, and I mean, they've been closed for 80 years, really almost 85 at this point, but we'll bring them out if everyone wants to hear about it. I mean, I don't know why everyone's so obsessed with this. I mean, this island with missing people and this whole thing about someone dying, I mean, it's really crazy how they line up like that, real coincidence. But we're gonna put out those files. Nobody asked about the other one. We're not getting into that. By the way, I want to say really quickly, big development here, big development. The Colombian president is an absolute, like the sucker. He comes to America, he says some crazy stuff, and then he gets his visa revoked and he flies away. Really crazy sort of a thing. I guess you could say he was gone with the wind back to Colombia. The trade winds are a really big thing. And speaking of trade winds, when they speak of trade winds, they're not sending their best. They're sending their stalest winds. They're the nastiest winds. You smell them and you go, that's really stale. It smells like cocaine. And that's why we're also going to be clumping Colombia in along with Venezuela. Same group. Trending agua is what we call it.
Wait a second. You're missing the plot. You're missing the whole plot. You're missing the forest for the trees. I said, you're looking at those trees, those beautiful birch trees. I said, stop looking at them. Stop it. Turn it off. Here's the problem. This is the problem in geopolitics, old-fashioned term, geopolitics. They made a big mistake in the last administration. They let the Iranians come over to America, and they let them shop at Costco. I said they need to ban them from Costco. They're buying in bulk. Believe me, they're going in there and finding that bulk rice, and they're buying it by the bag. And they're sending it right back to Tehran. It's a terrible thing, that thing. I tell you, they're going to get rice, and they're going to send it right back. They're going to boil it. They're going to eat it. It's not a good thing.
I gotta be honest with you. When I sat there and I was sitting there talking to my Secretary of Defense, he was about halfway through another rum and coke, and I said, what are the Iranians doing? And he said, they're in Costco. I said, what the hell are they doing in Costco? They could really do some damage. They could buy some depleted uranium up in that thing. We all know that at least Diddy alleged that he got baby oil in Costco, so who knows whatever else they have there. I mean, Costco is a crazy place. Have y'all been in there? The deals are great. The amount of stuff you can get is amazing. And so think about it. Big deals, little prices, and they possibly, allegedly, according to Diddy, had baby oil. So clearly they could have anything in there. They could have enriched uranium. It's a really crazy thing. So I said, stop them from going in Costco. Turn off the lights. Do not let them in. Close the doors. They cannot come into this place. They will not be allowed. And so we immediately stopped them. They tried to go to Newark across the river. Lincoln Tunnel is what they took. Lincoln Tunnel. They know a lot about tunnels. They dig a lot of them in Iran. A lot of nuclear sites have tunnels. But they went across the bridge and they went to Costco, and I told them, close the doors, turn off the lights, and they did, and they went home. They went home back to the United Nations building, and now they're getting back on their shitty little plane, and they're flying right back to Iran. And when they get back to Iran, they're going to have a little present for them. We're going to call it Operation Midnight Hammer 2.0. It's a really big thing. Bigly, it's going to be bigly.
That's the funny thing. They say, they tell me daily. They say United Nations. I said United Nations. I said, what a funny name that is right there. You couldn't call it something as crazy as that. I said, these nations that are in this organization, they're not even united. They come in there spewing this hot garbage. They don't even know how to run their country. That's what I told them. I told them that straight to their faces. You should have seen the look on their faces. I'm telling you should have seen the look. When that teleprompter went out, I was bewildered. I said, look, there's the first lady right there. I said, look at that. There's the first lady. I said, whoever's running the teleprompter, they call me some big trouble. I tell you what, big trouble. They got to have those words. Got to have them scrolling down the teleprompter beautifully. Got to have them rolling down. You just got to have them, Jack. You got to have them, Jack. I mean, you got to have the teleprompter. I mean, if you don't have it, you could be in trouble.
I gotta be honest with you. I sat there, I saw Iran recently, and I sat there and said, why is it called Iran? You know, they have Iraq and they have Iran, but they don't have an iPad, not a single iPad in Iran. It's really weird. You would think that it's a part of the Apple product series. I called up Tim Cook. I said, what is going on? He gave me another gold bar. I was really happy for it. And I said, what the hell is Iran? Is that an iPad, an iPhone? What is it? He said, it's not one of our products, sir. It's not one of our products, but I absolutely adore you. I love you, sir. You're great. And I said, thank you. I am great. I hung up the phone, and then I immediately got to figuring out what the hell is Iran, and it turns out they do nuclear shit. And I actually heard that the guy in Iran, he said, Bibi better not mess up my nuclear shit, and he sure as hell did. He blew it up. But anyways, I gotta stop doing that, folks. We are going to be moving on, though, into the next ones. Also, Matthew, how many super chats do we have left?
We have about 40.
Oh, man, we always have a lot of them by this point. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Interstate Chef, who puts in a $100 support, a massive support right there. And thank you very much, Interstate Chef, for supporting the channel through all of our jokes, good and bad. But he said, thank you for your reporting of the latest news and keeping our Americans safe to knowledge. And thank you again. And long live the Leaf Spring Army, and thank you.
Thank you so much for the massive support and the kind words, Interstate Chef. And I actually saw, Matthew, the Interstate Chef was rolling in laughter. He said he was dying from the voice impersonation in the chat. So I thank you for enjoying. We always do them in good jest. Back when the last president was the president, we used to do voices on him. And now we do voices on the current president. Whoever's in the office, we make some, we do some skits on them. But beyond that, I thank you so much for enjoying the joke. And I thank you for enjoying our coverage. We try our best, and we always love to know that people appreciate our coverage, our research, and the depth that we'll go into on largely every single story going on around the world. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Edward Curl. And Edward puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Edward, for that support. He said, take a question from the chat. I've been a fan since the first week of the war in Ukraine.
Hey, and thank you for being a fan for that long. That's a really long time. Now, we will make sure to get one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Chargy. And he said, has there ever been a female leader in modern history that has started a war?
Well, let's think. Has there been? I can't really think of any off the top of my head.
What about that one that was in Let 'Em Eat Cake?
That was Marie Antoinette. She wasn't even the leader of France. That was Louis XVI. She was just his wife. But
wasn't she like the queen or something? Or what? She had some role, didn't she? She wasn't just like nobody.
Well, she was the queen, but she had no power. All the power was in the sovereign, which was King Louis XVI, with how France worked. So she was just kind of there. Let's see.
I mean, she started a pretty bad war, a little bad skirmish.
I mean, if we're speaking in the modern era, you could say that Margaret Thatcher and her military involvement with the British Army and the Troubles in Northern Ireland could be considered an escalation of the sort, or the response to the Falkland Islands. But I can't really think of a lot of them off the top of my head, because there's not really a lot of female leaders, at least in the modern period. I mean, if we want to call the modern period, which technically is, I believe, from the 1600s onwards, there would be a lot of them. There would be Catherine the Great of Russia. There would be... Damn, I'm drawing a blank right now. I don't know why. Like, I would generally be able to list off a couple. Queen Elizabeth I, I believe, is a little bit right before the modern era. Technically, just a little bit before. But Catherine the Great would certainly be one. You could kind of argue that Margaret Thatcher was one. And you could come up with a couple of others as well. But I just don't really think there's a lot, because there really hasn't been a lot of women leaders through history. I mean, there's been a decent amount of them over the whole of recorded history, but not a huge enough amount of them for me to know all of them off the top of my head. And on top of that, I don't know the leaders of every country exorbitantly well. I'll know what the nations did as a state through different periods of history and some people involved in those decisions, but I don't really know the sequence of leaders perfectly to memory. Oh, actually, no, is a correction there. Really, any war that Britain got involved in while Queen Victoria was the sovereign could technically be considered a woman leader starting a war. So you could really go with any of them at that point, because back then, while benevolent leadership had been the thing since the Orange Revolution back in the 1670s, still up at that point in time, Queen Victoria had a lot of sway and power during that period, and the extremely benevolent leadership that we see nowadays really came into being after the death of Queen Victoria, and then that's when we saw that the monarchy became really more of a symbolic thing entirely than anything that ever exercised any sort of a power at all. So you could generally say that Queen Victoria definitely started a great deal of wars if you want to attribute that to her. But with that, a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that was my best shot, my best stab at answering that question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Wisdom, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Wisdom, for that support right there. He said, wild thought. What if they are UAPs, which is why that the Danish are not shooting the drones down?
That's a good question. And I would not really know how to answer that, honestly. I would be a little bit of miss. They should shoot whatever is down in their airspace that isn't allowed to be there. So I wouldn't really know why they wouldn't shoot those down either if that was the case. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, here's a perfect example, folks, of how bots work in the chat. There's this fella in the chat, Damien here, who came in at first and said, "You spent 2 minutes or 20 minutes being political by impersonating a politician. What is this joke?" And I said, how's it political to impersonate a politician's voice? It's not like we're talking about policy points or something like that. And then he said, "Propaganda machine." I was like, oh, there we go. There's the root cause of the problem right there. He thinks he's a bot, and he thinks that we're against his country. So, sorry, buddy. But anyways, no potato for you.
Also,
But
it's like we
moving
didn't
into our
say we
next
loved
one-
or hated him. We just did his voice and did some
Right.
stuff that people would have as like cultural touch points on things he's done and said. Like it was just a thing for the joke. People have gotta, like, it's a bot, but people have gotta lighten up a little bit, folks. We made jokes all the time on Biden. We did his voice endlessly and made jokes about him when he was president, and now it's the turn of the next guy. Like we can't retroactively just bring Biden back into the presidency to make jokes on him anymore. He's gone. We did it for 3 years. Now it's the next guy's turn, and then when he's gone and another guy takes his place, it'll be that guy's turn. That's how we do it on the channel. It's incredibly fair. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Robert Krogan, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Robert, for that $20 support. We do appreciate that. And he said, enjoy a cup on me.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. We will enjoy a cup on you. We actually have been having some great cups of coffee lately because Matthew got a coffee making machine, and that thing is amazing. It's great. It's really good. And so a huge thanks to you.
It's so good.
It's amazing, really. It freshly grinds the beans, and then it brews it up, like, all on its own. It's really cool. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next. Also, I saw someone say, wait a minute, you did Biden? Look, Jack, what do you think this was? Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. Like, we did his voice literally the whole time we were on air when he was president. Some people thought it was Jimmy Stewart, but we still did his voice. Like, we endlessly did it. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat here goes to Sully Canuck. And he puts in a 20. And thank you very much, good sir Sully, for that support. He said, congratulations on 500,000 subs, guys. And here's a little something to help you keep going. And I continue to listen to your daily updates for the real news of the world. And yours, your loyal Canadian Navy vet follower.
Hey, and thank you so much for being our loyal Canadian Navy vet follower, Sully Canuck, all the way from London, Ontario. And I got to thank you greatly for the support and enjoying this channel and helping it to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't have been able to keep it rolling, and we wouldn't be able to have such amazing folks like you with amazing stories from around the world who enjoy our show and help us to keep this thing running. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again, and thank you for the congrats on 500,000, and hopefully you'll be here with us at 1 million. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than Philip Wilson. And thank you very much, Philip, for that $20 support. He said, I meant that low and slow A-10 would be cheaper than air-to-air missiles over NATO airspace, where ground fire or air combat is not a factor, and not that they are viable in contested airspace.
And that's a good point. But my counter to that is that if we use an A-10, we would either have to fire AIM-9s and everything, which would still be about 300 grand to pop per an AIM-9, or we would have to use that 30mm GAL. And that 30mm GAL, we don't know what the backstop to those rounds are going to be a couple of miles away from there. I do get what you're saying, though. And it would be cheaper per flight hour by a good bit, but it would still be expensive to use a missile because that's what we have to end up using. And if we use the gun, there could be a great deal of collateral. So I do thank you for the support, but I generally would still say that the A-10 may not be the best answer. I think that the truck-based machine gun style technicals with spotlights is probably our most effective answer at the moment to the drone incursions. But a huge thanks to you once again, and thank you for clarifying. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to B. Woodward, who puts in a 17. He said, Corporal Ryan Woodward did not give his life in the Middle East for BS politics, the U.S. He gave his life for the spirit of human freedom on the planet. And how will the U.S. redeem his sacrifice?
I thank you for the support. Generally, a soldier of the United States that lays down his life in the line of service isn't laying it down for the good of mankind. He's generally laying it down for the Republic. That's the oath that he makes. He doesn't make an oath to the humans of the world. He makes an oath to the Republic of the United States of America, the Constitution, and to the Congress and the President. So I would have to say that generally, the United States, the unfortunate loss of Corporal Woodward is tragic. But as far as his duties are concerned, he followed his duties to the letter and unfortunately paid for that with his life. But that is why we honored the dead in the armed forces, is because they lay down their lives in service of the nation and the Republic. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Blackbird 9707, who puts in a 15. And they said, watching at work in Tasmania.
Hey, that's really cool to hear. Down in Tasmania. Yeah, Hobart, I'd assume. Really cool place. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it rolling. So a big, massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, real quick, I want to address the poll. I said coffee preference because I was curious, because people were mentioning it in the live chat. It looks like 36% said medium roast, 35% said dark roast, 9% said light, and 20% said I don't drink coffee. Honestly, I'll tell y'all this. Like, I've tried all three over the course of years and years and years of drinking coffee. I've never really cared for light roast. It tastes a little bit too sour. Like once it gets cooled off and it starts cooling from being way too hot, it starts getting sour tasting to me. I don't like that. Also, dark roast tends to have no real flavor to it. It's just really bitter. Medium roast is honestly the best. Like I know people are gonna hate on me for this, but they're just like Starbucks pike roast, like whole bean. Like that's my favorite one actually. What sounds kind of lame is it's not known for like being super like fantastic or anything, but it's actually just a good common coffee. I kind of like that. So yeah, and also we have 19% that don't drink coffee at all. So kind of interesting. They must be British with tea or something. But Enforcer, what say you?
Tea, energy drinks, all those sorts of deals are probably the next 20%. But I would have to say that I drink dark roasts. I'm not really one to drink coffee for flavor. I just drink my coffee black, no cream, no sugar. And so if it's flavorless, that's fine with me. It just tastes like hot water at that point, and I get my caffeine and I get to work. So I would be, not really honestly, a medium roast isn't bad either. I mean, it does have a little bit of flavor, but at least for me on my end, I just kind of drink the coffee to get it over with. So I'll be with the 35% since it has the least flavor, and generally is just the most tolerable for that. But I hope that does address it the best I can. And also, man, how many super chats do we have left?
About 30.
About 30. Oh, heavens, fellows. We're going through this at a nice clip, and we'll keep that up. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Blito3 WOT once again, and he puts in a 10 this time. And thank you very much, Blito, for that $10 support once again, and we do appreciate that. And we also have a 10 from SC Dear Girl, who said they really are happy about the infantry. They said, Queen of Battle, follow me.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and great to hear that you love the infantry. You'd make a great rifleman. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Philip Watson, who puts in a 10. And Philip said, could this drone situation be why the U.S. sent A-10s to Europe?
Possibly, but I would generally think that the A-10 wouldn't necessarily be suited to anti-drone operations. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, let's see. Judy Jackson said 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day. They now say is good for you. I can't keep straight like what they say is good for people or not. Honestly, to me personally, I don't even really care. Like I drink 2 a day now. If I don't have coffee in the morning, I've gotten this bad. If I don't have coffee in the morning, I'm kind of messed up all day. So I don't know if you can call that addicted at that point or what. I think it maybe is, but I've just come to grips with it. It helps me though. Like without the coffee though, I'm basically a zombie during the day. I'm just not functioning at all. With the coffee though, I feel like okay, I'm like nice and alert throughout the whole day, and then I drink another coffee right before the stream starts to stay alert throughout the stream. So that's the way I do it personally. If they say that's unhealthy, that's just tough because otherwise I'm just like shuffling around all day.
Yeah, and also I saw someone say in the chat, Matt is so no nonsense. That flavor is extra. That was me, sir. I'm not Enforcer Matt, sir. I'm the enforcer, sir. I was the one who was the no-nonsense man about the no flavor. Matthew likes the flavor. And honestly, though, I will say it is nice to have flavor in them because we actually got a myriad of them, and some of them do have flavors. And those are actually quite nice, really. But at least for me, I mean, generally, I kind of am a no-nonsense, no-frills person when it comes to the coffee side of things. Food, I like it to taste good. Coffee, it doesn't have to taste like anything, really, to me. It just has to get the job done and have caffeine in it. And as long as it does that, it's fine. And so with that, I hope that clarifies that because so many people get us confused, folks. We look in the comment sections of our videos, and when Matthew makes a video, some people are saying, great job, Enforcer. You did good today. And it's Enforcer Matt that made the video. And then sometimes when I make a video, in the comment section, people will be going, great job, Enforcer Matt. That was a really well-made video. And then we're like, that's not us. That's the other guy. That's not us. But we sound really similar to a lot of people. So a lot of people get us mixed up. Some people actually think we're the same person. And some people think that it's just one guy and he's schizophrenic and he's pretending to talk to himself, although we're literally two separate people. Which is the funniest interpretation of the show, honestly. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Sligoy the Sauce, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Sligoy, for that $10 support. They said, the picture is AI, and the rifles bend up on the right side of the pick, and all the troops are the same height, in my opinion.
They all... But those rifles, see? I believe that actually is a Chinese model. It's kind of like an AK of a sort. Let me go pull it up. Chinese Army equipment. Chinese Army equipment. There we are. Let's go look at the rifles. We'll find an answer to this soon enough, sir. Yeah, see, it's the QBZ 191 that they have right there. And that's it exactly. I mean, the trigger guard, everything. And AI doesn't really do that. If you ever played around with AI trying to design a firearm, they just kind of mesh every firearm in history together into one. And these are fairly uniform. And generally, at least for honor guards in the People's Liberation Army, they actually have a specific height requirement that you have to be 1 inch or taller or shorter than to be able to meet a certain requirement to be in a certain unit that will be out in front of the cameras. And that may be the reason why they all look to be a similar height. Because if you do look, some of them, like this guy, is a little bit shorter than everyone else. But generally, they have very stringent height requirements within some honor guards inside of dictatorial nations like these. So let's see, Chinese military parade. And let's see if we can find this picture on Google and see if it says that it's made by AI. Because it ought to be quick. Let's see here. But I'll generally show you, like, you'll see here, this is a Chinese honor guard. Everybody is the same height. They have very stringent requirements for this sort of thing because they think that having everyone as an exact uniform height looks good on camera, and really it does. So everyone has to be the same height. No one can be taller, no one really can be shorter. Everyone's identical. So that way it looks good on camera, it looks uniform, and that's a really big thing in communist ethos, is that you aren't an individual, you're a collective, and this sort of ideal here of having everyone the exact same height in these units follows with that sort of communistic ideal. But I can't find that picture. And of course, there's gazillions of them. So unfortunately, I can't find this one quickly to be able to try and just reverse image search it. I would generally have to say I don't think it's AI. This looks to not be AI. And also there would be imperfections, and I'm not seeing any imperfections that are glaring out to me. But the big thing, Steve,
there's a source article right there on the right, actually, in the comments that the fellow posted this original thing.
So it's the Washington Post. So I would assume that they're
That's
not
real.
using, yeah, I would assume they're definitely not using AI-made pictures. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
The hell was that? Like, why did a gun just flash across the screen?
I have no clue. I have no clue at all. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Ryan, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Ryan, for that $10 support. He said, St. Catherine's here in LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Interstate Chef, who puts in another 10. He said, hello, enforcers. I appreciate your news, and I find it very informative, non-biased, and real. And thank you all, and much appreciated in LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words. And I gotta say, it's wonderful to see so many people saying kind words like that all the time. Like, our comment sections are filled with people who say that we are their daily bread and butter for news. And it's wonderful to hear that from folks. And I gotta thank you so much for the kind words, and also supporting the channel so that we can keep this thing running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to El Kuva, who puts in a 10. They said, given how awful China's performance has been in the UN missions, are we really concerned with their military capabilities? Because it seems like NATO just needs to actually show force.
I would say that we are somewhat concerned about it because while their operations and UN missions have been much less than satisfactory, we don't really know what they would look like if they're fighting as a full-scale conventional army against a conventional force. Most of their peacekeeping missions, they're fighting against unconventional forces, and they generally fare poorly in those sorts of engagements. But we don't know what they would look like in a conventional engagement against us. So there's a little bit of an unknown there, and that's what makes us somewhat hesitant. What if they're a lot better than we thought they are, or if they're a lot worse, we have nothing to worry about. But what if they are a lot better off? And then that leads us to hesitate a little bit and think maybe we ought to not try and push them in a corner and get them. And on top of that, China does have strategic nuclear weapons that can hit the United States and are designed to do that, really, as a strategic deterrence of a sort, and also to hit Russia because they consider Russia an enemy, or historically have. So that's also another reason that makes us think twice generally about starting a war with China. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Son of Hearn, who puts in a 10. And thank you as well, good sir, for that support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And we also have a 10 from Mechtild55. And they said, here's a share. Charming foot-tapping, uplifting Ukraine folk song. And it's in Ukrainian. And I sadly don't know how to pronounce that. But they gave the YouTube ID too.
Oh, let me go see. Which super chat was that, old boy? Which one was that?
Mechtild55.
And that was a 10, you say?
Yes.
Mechtild55. Heavens. Where is it? Mechtild55. Where is this? You say?
You know what you're doing? I mean, do you even know what you're doing?
Let's see. It's, Sokoli. That would be... Hey, 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 Sokolia. That's like their folk song about the formation of Poland, Belarus, and Ukraine. And that's a pretty nice song, actually. We can't play it, sadly, on stream. All versions of it are copyrighted. We actually had one play in our intro years ago when we had to get rid of it because it was copyrighted. But it's a really cool song because it's talking about three brothers, and they follow a eagle through the sky. And at certain points along their path, a brother will stop. And they would just say, I'm just staying here. And then that brother would go and create Poland, and one of them would create Belarus, and then one of them created Ukraine. And that's kind of like the lyrics of the song for the general part. And the chorus is, hey, 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 Sokolia. It's a really good song, though. It's pretty cool. But I do thank you so much for
Those
support.
three brothers, they were a powerhouse, I'm telling you. They created a country by country as they went.
They were country builders. They're creators, not destroyers. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Interstate Chef once again, who puts in a 10. And they said, there's also another YouTuber close to you as well, but your newsfeed is what I look forward to every night and every day, and the shorter videos too, and I really enjoy them. And thank you. Let's get 1 million, LSA.
And let's hit 1 million, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And I gotta say, it's really cool. It's so cool to see that back in the day we got dissed on by quite a good bit of people. But as we have grown, a lot of people have found us, a lot of other YouTubers, and they really say good things about us. A lot of kind words. I think a lot of people understand at this point that the voices and the jokes are a part of our shtick, and just to lighten things up and make it a little bit easier on people to hear news every day. But we actually got a compliment from a YouTube channel that has 600,000 subscribers, and the fellow was going through his news coverage, and he brought up a tweet that Matthew had made, and he was saying, this is a tweet from the Enforcer. This is what they do. They're on YouTube. They run a YouTube channel. They make videos and streams. They talk primarily about world events, specifically what's going on in Eastern Europe. And he stopped saying like his monologue, and he just went, "This guy is locked in," and we were like, man, like it was so funny to hear it, because he stopped everything to say that we were locked in, and we were like, that is a really huge compliment. And on top of that, to stop a monologue just to throw out that we're locked in and we are really good at what we do, we were like, man, that is like really it was really funny to hear, and it was also super cool to know that we got a compliment just out of the blue from someone who knows what we do. And so I got to say huge thanks to you for the kind words and the support. It's really just cool to know that people generally across the board really enjoy the channel and what we do. But a massive thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Interstate Chef, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Interstate Chef, for that $10 support. He said, yeah, and keep it up.
Hey, thank you so much for supporting. Yeah, we'll keep it up. Yeah, we're about to turn to that one guy who's saying that song where you say, yeah, okay. But anyway, so that huge thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Interstate Chef yet again. And a huge shout to Interstate Chef, by the way. Crazy support tonight. We do appreciate that. He said, "Can you see the marmot full up in tactical gear, ready to go, or just a cheerleader, LOL?"
The marmot would be in tactical gear, ready to go. I think the marmot would look cool like that. But a huge thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to none other than D. Fletcher 2007, who put in a 10. And thank you very much as well. They said, "I saw a news story today stating that the Russian public is beginning to turn against Putin. And do you think that will matter at all in disrupting his war plans?" Now, D. Fletcher, I would ask you, who put that out? Because there's really no way to poll the Russians, because number one, most of them won't speak to a pollster or a journalist about it because they don't want to get caught by the FSB, and they're worried that maybe the pollster might be FSB trying to catch them. And also number two, I'm not really sure who would actually have access to the Russian civilians either. So that's interesting right there. But Enforcer, what say you?
That is quite interesting, and I would have to wonder who made that article as well, because it is really hard to poll the folks out there in Russia and to get an idea of what they really think, at least certainly right now with how restrictive it is in their country. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
You know, the weird thing in Russia, amongst the civilian population, most Russians, especially rural living Russians that are outside the city, they have an extremely negative view of the media, like very negative. Like they actively despise the media, not just the Russian channels inside of Russia, but they despise outside media as well, because they all believe, from what I can tell and what I can gather, is that they're all trying to spin the story a certain way, which in Russia, that's true. The state media spins it clearly toward Putin, in my personal opinion. And also the outside media tries to spin it against Russia at all costs in the views of the Russian civilians. So they hate the media. Like if you think Americans hate the mainstream media, the Russians hate it way, way worse, at least from what I've seen.
I mean, honestly, that's not incorrect, though, because if y'all ever listen to our channel, I mean, we are vehemently pro-Western, pro-American, really, at the core. So we will say everything and anything about our adversaries and enemies in a negative light. We do not view them as good nations whatsoever. So, I mean, that would be true to a degree. But honestly, that's a little bit unfair, at least to mainstream networks like honestly CNN, because CNN, just to be straight up with y'all, at least in my opinion, makes the war in Ukraine like a crying bitching fest. Like they're like, the Ukrainians aren't fighting this just dirty struggle, this vehement monolithic sort of a struggle to survive and maintain their sovereignty as a nation. They just look at it as another sound of an artillery shot. The Russians are getting closer. The Ukrainians live in fear and discontent every day. It's a terrible life for these people. And one day, it's all going to end for them. Their number's going to be on the bullet. And I'm like, that's like a really bad way of looking at this. It's like, if this was your country, if America was being invaded like this right now, I'm very sure that many Americans would believe that we should fight till the finish to keep our country free and not under Russian rule or any other foreign nation's rule. And I really don't like the way a lot of American mainstream channels look at it, because they just look at the death and the suffering in Ukraine, and they go, why? And they don't even think that if this wasn't happening, if people weren't fighting and dying every day on that front line in Ukraine, Ukraine wouldn't exist, and there would be tons of people living as third-class citizens in their own country and most likely getting genocided by the Russians slowly yet surely. You know, they don't think of it like that. They just think of it as the suffering in Ukraine on the front's terrible, and they don't think of anything else beyond that as to the implications as to if the Russians did win and the war ended quickly, what would that look like for all those people? And it will look terrible. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Adam's Journal, who puts in a 10. He said, my first donation, and also a huge shout out to you, good sir. Thank you
Hey.
for deciding to support the channel. He said, I hope we have peace in both Ukraine and Russia.
I would have to say hopefully one day we will, but hopefully we won't see a peace that's cheaply gained and easily lost afterwards as well. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I see everybody talking about the Russians and the media and stuff like that. You know, here's one group, folks, I wish we could kind of emulate. Like, I will say, we don't want to really emulate anybody. We want to be original. But one group that really did it really good back in the day is Vice News. Like, Vice News was the king of getting on the ground and getting information. Like, in my opinion, back about 7 or 8 years ago, when they did their coverage of Crimea, that whole situation, and also Russia, they did a fantastic job, like, over the top when it comes to, like, documenting all that. Also, North Korea, they did an over the top job as well. That's how, like, I've seen a lot of footage from Crimea back in the day before Putin annexed it, and that's where a lot of the knowledge I have from on the ground sentiments by the Russians and the Ukrainians come from. Is from Vice News' reporting right there. I haven't really seen any other news network do it the way Vice did it. But they, in my opinion, they've kind of gotten away from that in the modern day. They've kind of gotten a little bit lazier, but they used to be on their game back in the day, at least in my opinion.
Man, honestly, I was like the one thing I loved the most from Vice back in the day. They actually did the Ukraine war too. I don't know if you saw those, but they were up on the front, literally the fighting front back in the 2014 era in the Donbass conflict. They did amazing coverage. That's actually where they blew up as a network. Was during the Ukraine war during its first phase in 2014. And then they had that one guy, honestly, folks, that did the North Korean thing about the labor camp in Siberia and then went to North Korea. That guy not only had a great presentation style, he was really good at what he did and made it interesting, but also they just had a great crew. I mean, it was really good work. It was insane stuff. That's why they blew up. I mean, they were on top of their game for the longest time. But then they really stopped doing that sort of stuff, I think because of the risk involved, and also probably the fact that insurance wouldn't cover any of that taken on risk, so they started to most likely veer all of that off. That's what I'd assume, at least, because that's usually one of the reasons why people stop doing risky content, is that they, like on networks, or at least big networks, is that they can't get anyone to insure these people when they're doing that. And then also on top of that, they started to move into that less apolitical coverage like they were doing, where it was just showing what was happening, and they started to get really political. And honestly, folks, that was actually one of the big, at least to me, it was one of the big role models that I had for making this channel in the first place, is what Vice News was when it first started, which was apolitical and just covered straight up facts and information of what was going on and showed it for what it was. The only difference is that we actually don't go to those places and show it like they did back in the day. We just compile video and picture evidence from everyone around the world and then show it throughout the course of the night. But still, they were great back in the day. It's a shame that they've been going downhill a lot since, over the following years after that, but they were the golden age of news in the early eras of YouTube back then. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, that guy you're talking about is Shane Smith. I think he's one of the founders, original like people that started Vice, I believe, if I have that correct. So yeah, that was that fella. He did some of the good ones too, like the North Korean stuff. Like he was in some of those. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to T85 Conrad, who puts in a 10, and he said, "Good morning from Krakow, Poland, and listen to you guys while heading to work on the tram. And thank you for the amazing updates."
Hey, and thank you so much for the support all the way from the glorious and beautiful city of Krakow, Poland. Really beautiful and neat place. Another country I want to see on my lists of nations to visit is the Republic of Poland. Really beautiful country. And also Krakow is a very beautiful city. And I hope that you had a nice ride on the tram to work. I hope you got to hear a lot of the news that's going on around your home country. And I hope that you have a great and wonderful day at work inside of the wonderful city of Krakow, Poland. Take a look at this, folks. I'm going to drop you all down on Street View here because this is a city worth shouting out. And this is the historic quarter of the city. And I mean, look at it. I mean, it's really something.
That is nice. Like, I would like to visit over here someday. Like, I would really like to see it.
Yeah, it's so freaking cool. Honestly, folks, Poland is a really neat country. A lot of history behind it too. This is like Poland really is the battlefield of Europe. Whenever there was a war, at least a major one, it either happened over here near Alsace-Lorraine in France or somewhere in this area, or it happened in Poland. Like it was one of those two places. And Poland was pretty much the Thunderdome of Eastern Europe, and still somehow, even through being the Thunderdome, they built an incredibly interesting culture, tradition, nation for that matter, and a legacy within the region. One of the key nations of Eastern Europe, really, as far as being a cultural keystone. But anyways, a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Just a Plumber 3, who puts in a 5, who said, what did the general in South Korea say to the Secretary of War after being called in for a meeting in Virginia? And see you next Tuesday.
That's funny. Oh, man.
What's the joke? I'm missing it.
He's going to be back. He's going to be back, you know?
I still don't get it. It's going right over my head. Like, what is it?
Oh, forget. I don't get it either. Like, I was just playing along. Like I wasn't one to say, Matthew, do you get it? I was one to play along. But still, a big thanks to you for the support. Unfortunately, it is going over my head as well. But it did sound like it was a funny one if I got it. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address it quite well indeed. And also, Cody Fritz said Warsaw might be better. And Warsaw is better as far as a city looks. Look at that. The first picture of Warsaw is a railroad. They're speaking my language, people. But beyond that, why are so many pictures of the light rail in the city? I'm trying to find
Do you know how they named Warsaw, by the way? Do you know how the city got its name?
They had a saw and it was used for war.
Well, I mean, you're actually kind of close. The whole thing with the naming of Poland and Warsaw specifically, it was a little bit complex, but I'm going to try to like simple it down a little bit. Obviously, Poland being like the war basket, they say, of Europe, Warsaw was right at the center of that. So what happened is when they started cutting down some trees to like build the city, like obviously they had to have room to build their buildings, so they had to cut down some trees. Well, they realized that they had to cut down the trees in the middle of war, so it became a Warsaw at that point. So then they started Warsawing their way through the forest, and they started building the city around it. And therefore, it became Warsaw.
Man, you BSing. Like, you BSing that story so hard. Man, I pulled it up, and apparently the common idea is that it actually is named after warts, short form of the old Polish name Warsaw, meaning belonging to wars. So that's what I think it apparently means. It doesn't really matter. It's still a beautiful city. I mean, look at it. Look at it. I mean, that's really beautiful, actually.
That is nice. That honestly kind of looks like Huntsville a little bit for some reason in this picture right here.
I'm not going to lie, man. This place really does look like it's becoming a $1 trillion economy these days.
Honestly, it kind of does. Like, Andrew Tateville.
What color is your Bugatti? Oh, man.
My Bugatti is invisible color.
Man, my Bugatti is not real. Like, it's fake. Man, rip to... You know what? I'm just gonna leave that joke out. You probably knew what I was about to say, because there's another guy like him, that had something unfortunate happen to him today. Oh, very unfortunate. But... let's see. What does their main train station look like? I wonder. You can always tell a country off of how nice their train stations are. And, oh, wow, that's nice, actually. That's like a brand new one. What engine is this? It's like a freaking thing from Predator or something like that from that movie, like when the alien took the mask off.
Why do they have the same paint scheme on that tram back there behind that train as the UTA system in Salt Lake City?
Honestly, that logo is like just like the UTAs as well on the side of it. You see that right there, that little logo?
Yeah, it looks like they're about to take you down to Ogden or something.
They about to take you on the front runner. Like, they about to take you down there. Oh, wow. Man, honestly, Poland's kind of got it going with these trains, really. I mean, this is quite an interesting... Oh, look, the station was under construction here.
Wow, look at that. That's crazy right there.
So
you know what else is crazy? Is we still have 25 Super Chats left.
Oh, Matthew, I mean, this rush, this incredulous rush. We do really need to get going, though. But anyways, with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Bruce Lee, who puts in a 5. And Bruce said, so, is Russia actually in the find-out phase, or will things drone on for another 2 weeks? LLC.
I think things might drone on for another 2 weeks, but they're getting very close to finding out. But a big thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to CEG, who puts in a 5. And they said, anti-war sentiment is pretty high in the United States. How do you think the general population would react to a war with Russia?
Anti-war sentiments high in the United States. Well, you don't really get a say in how they react to a war with Russia because they start one with us. We really don't have a choice. Like, we can't just give up and walk away because no one really wants to fight it at that point because it becomes a matter of national defense. So I hope that does address that quite well, at least in my opinion. And also, it really isn't an anti-war sentiment. It's more so people don't like that one because when we say we're going to war with Venezuela, half of the country says that's wonderful, and the other half says it's the worst thing since, Hitler or something like that. And then when you talk about a war in Europe, half of everyone says it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then the other half says it's the worst thing in humanity. And it really depends on your political affiliation for most people on whether they like a war or whether they don't. And the unfortunate answer for a lot of those people is life doesn't play that sort of a silly game. It works on, is this a matter of national defense or is it not? And if it is, folks are going to war whether they want to or not, and that's just kind of the truth of it all. But a huge thanks to you once again, because I also bet if you polled those same people, a large majority of them hate taxes. But guess what? They have to pay them, unfortunately. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to 535 Medic, who puts in a 5. They said Russia will help West Taiwan have a special 3-day military operation.
Oh, that won't turn out well if they're helping them out with that one. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Pyleron, who puts in a 5. And they said, hello from New Zealand, and thanks for the content.
And thank you for the support and enjoying our content all the way from New Zealand. So a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And also, Vinny said, can you imagine Gen Z being drafted? I know, that's crazy, right? It's like Gen Z giving you your news, which is actually what you're doing right now. We're Gen Z. We're giving you the news. So if we can give you the news pretty good, I think Gen Z can fight a war pretty damn well, like everyone else could. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. Huh?
I'm not Gen Z.
Yes, you are. You're Gen Z.
I don't claim it.
Well, Matthew, a lot like taxes, that's not your choice. You are Gen Z.
I don't claim it. I rebuke this Gen Z. I tell you, I rebuke it. I'm not a part of it.
I mean, we are Gen Z, Matthew. We are Gen Z. I mean, I was born in 2002. You were born in 2000. I mean, it's just the law. It's what it is. It's who we are.
I feel like this is what they're going to call in the history books. This era of Russia's attempted conquest is Generation Z. I feel like that's what they're going to call it.
Maybe that's why the symbol on their vehicles is a Z, is because they were planning on wiping out Gen Z in this war, or the Third World War. Maybe that's what they were thinking.
Yeah, sickos.
I mean, dastardly bastards. But anyways, in that, I hope that doesn't address that well. But I also hope that addresses that incredibly well to you, sir. If you think that Gen Z would be ridiculous to draft, well, you don't think that Gen Z is ridiculous telling you your news because you're listening to us, sir. You're listening to us. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Gisla Minar, who puts in a 5. Who said, like that smash button, LTLSA.
Hey, and hit the like button, folks. Hit it. And so a massive thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Hoodoo, Texas, who puts in a 5. And Hoodoo said, something is Russian in the state of Denmark. Shakespeare, if he was writing Hamlet in 2025.
That's deep. That's really deep. And I thank you for the support and sharing that with us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Blind Man. And he said, good morning, enforcers from Metamora, Illinois. And hello there to Metamora. He said, 12:30 in the a.m. and sitting in front of the Abe Lincoln Courthouse listening to you guys and LLT, LSA. And also, I hope everything's going okay. I don't know why you're at the courthouse, but I hope everything's going okay as well. But thank you very much, Blind Man. And enforcer, what say you?
And what city was he in? Oh boy, what city was he in?
Metamursal. No, Metamora.
Metamora? Where in the world is that? Metamora? In Illinois. I want to figure out where this is. Oh, it's right at it. The Lincoln Courthouse. Is this the one? I guess this is, I suppose, it's the historical one. That's actually quite interesting to hear, and I thank you for the support and sharing that with us. And also, thank you for enjoying the show so late in the night, like many others. And so, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Brian Gonzalez, who puts in a 5. He said the U.S. Constitution guarantees rights. Confer implies that you don't have them unless the Constitution says you do. And persons is everyone within the borders. And actually, that is true.
That is true, yes. Persons is everyone inside of the national borders. But the U.S. Code, U.S. Code 18, let's see, I think it was 2835, which is the code against insurrection and rebellions, says that nobody can incite an insurrection or rebellion in the United States. That is a felonious offense and would be subject to up to 10 years in prison. So that guy actually did break the law in this country, at least by what
Allegedly.
allegedly, when he was in New York City as a part of that protest. And for that reason, it's generally not a good thing to do on a diplomatic visa, like it's just saying. But a big thanks to you for the support. But the law is the law, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but while you have a freedom of speech in this country, which is certainly true and an unalienable right, as many people would know, you do not have a right to advocate for the overthrowing the insurrection or rebellion against the government of the United States, or the government of any state for that matter. That is a felony. And so, while a lot of people would believe that free speech is absolute, free speech allows you for you to criticize things within our nation. Like, if you don't like anything in domestic politics, or if you don't like the president, or if you don't like the vice president, or all the representatives, or the senators, or anyone for that matter, you have the right to be able to say those things and speak your mind about what kind of policies you think are good or bad, and so on and so forth. But you do not have the right in this country to say that you should pick up arms against the government and overthrow it. That is 100% a felony by law. It's a statute. You cannot do that. And that's something that some people don't really know. And that's also something that I really don't understand, at least, that a lot of people think you should have a right to say. I mean, if you would like to say that you don't like something the government's doing, that's wonderful. If you don't like a war, that's wonderful. You have certainly a right to say that. And you certainly have a right to vote for your representatives that you believe that would further push forward that sort of ideal. But if the whole country doesn't agree with you, and your guy doesn't win an election, that also, or your guy wins an election, either way, that still doesn't give you a right to run around and say that we ought to take up arms and overthrow the government. I generally would agree with that statute and that law. Even if I had a point to disagree with it, it doesn't really seem American to try and overthrow the government that's democratically elected anyways. But anyways, a huge thanks to you for the support and how about the channel to keep on running. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, just to make it clear, you cannot get a permit to commit treason. There's no such thing. So I don't know why somebody was arguing that earlier in the chat. You literally cannot get a permit to commit treason.
You're gonna go to the government that you're trying to overthrow and ask them for a license to conduct treason.
Bro said, "Hey, I'm here to apply for that treason permit." It's like, excuse me. It's like, say again, that treason permit. Yeah, we got a permit for you. Let's go bring you to the judge real quick, and we'll get you what's called an arrest warrant instead. It's like, that'll help.
We'll have your arraignment tomorrow. Oh, man. Oh, damn. That's crazy, though. I'd never heard of that. A treason permit. License to treason.
I've never heard that one either. That's the first.
That's new to me. I'll have to look into the department that issues, though, as I think that's under the Bureau of Land Management or something. But anyways, now we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Retribution Ophalim, who put in a 5, and they said, let's see here. Okay, hold on a minute. This person going off on us or something because they don't like the fact that we say that Israel's an ally of the United States. I'm sorry, buddy, but I'm gonna have to just pass on these right here because they're a little bit crazy sounding. I'm not gonna lie, but thank you for that support. And moving on to our next one here, this one goes to Sheba Floof, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much, Sheba, for that support. They said peace sells, but who's buying?
Nobody really, unfortunately. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one's from Stay in the Pursuit, who puts in a 5. And they said, good morning from Lithuania, and that we are all safe here. And where could I find the info on Kaliningrad encirclement? And thanks a lot for the coverage.
You can find it here. We actually have all of it on our map. Link in the description below, and you can find all the markers that we have of all of the NATO air activities that are surrounding Kaliningrad day after day at this point. But I do thank you for the support, and good to hear that y'all are safe in Lithuania. I would hope that y'all are. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, I see some people, oh man, this is, folks, this is stuff that I find interesting. Some people are saying that it's political to point out a statute. It's not. I think some people mistake that. Citing the law is not political. If the law says that you can constitutionally carry in the state of Alabama and do not require a concealed carry permit, that is the law. That's not a political thing. I'm not saying whether I agree with that or not. That's just the law of the state of Alabama. That's what it is. Pointing that out isn't political, that's just a fact. If I say that there is a statute in the U.S. Code that says that inciting an insurrection or rebellion inside of the United States or elsewhere is a felonious offense, then that is the law. That's not political. And so, but it's still, the revoking of someone's visa, like the president of Colombia's, because he allegedly made those statements in New York City, which were caught on film, that isn't something that is like a political debate. He technically, at least according to the allegations, violated a statute of the U.S. Code, and whether he's an American citizen or
Allegedly.
well, that's all. This is all allegedly, of course, but he allegedly, if he conducted that act, he violated the U.S. Code, and so they have a ground to revoke his visa, considering that he has diplomatic immunity. They can't charge him with a crime; they could just send him back to where he came from. So they revoked his visa and they sent him back. So, like, on a whole bunch of other things, there could be room for debate on whether that was the right thing to do or not. But based off of what he's alleged to have said in New York City and their response, I mean, technically, they're doing what they want by the letter of the law at that point. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Storm, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Storm, for that $5 support. And we do appreciate that very much. We also have a 5 that just came in from Tracy. And thank you very much, Tracy, for that 5 as well. And we appreciate you very, very much. We also have a 5 from CK Bold, who said, take a live chat question, and we shall, CK Bold. And thank you very much for that support, and we do appreciate that. And the live chat question goes to AF Kaplan, who said, is it known what type of drones were over Germany, and if they were armed or not?
We do not know the types of drones over Germany, and we do not know what type they were either, unfortunately. We just know that they were there, and we know nothing more. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And someone said, we have a right to overthrow a corrupt government. You do not. Like, you don't. Like, that's not a thing that exists. You have a right to vote out the representatives that you believe are corrupt. You do not have a right to overthrow the U.S. government. I can find you literally in the U.S. Constitution, ratified in 1787, the exact provision in Article 1, which lays out the authorities of the Congress, which specifically states that they have a duty to put down insurrections. Actually, that's also a enumerated power of the president as well, is to put down rebellions and insurrections. So if you ever even, like, and also that's a very subjective thing. What if you're going off of baseless claims that they're a corrupt government and you're using that to try and conduct an overthrow? There's no legal statute saying that you have a right to do that, so you just don't. Like, there's no way to justify any attempt to conduct an armed overthrow of the government. It's against the law for any justification or purpose. And also, I would think that's un-American. Just vote those people out. I mean, there's plenty of corrupt people throughout all of American history that have been in politics. Tammany Hall, the Teapot Dome scandal, and so on. And a lot of those people either face punishment, got a slap on the wrist, or they got voted out, one or the other.
That's right, yeah. They always said you gotta be careful because it's a crime to incite an insurrection. It's a crime. They said don't do that. That's bad. That's a terrible thing. I mean, make sure you're always cautious and stuff, and think about it before you know. Anyway, but with that, folks, we are now moving on to our next one here, as we are running super late. This one goes to Shadowskill54, who puts in a 5. And they said, do you think the drone spotted over New Jersey a few months back could have been a Russian ghost ship, and now it's happening in Europe?
Oh, no, that was our boys. The U.S. government said that eventually, just a little while ago. They said those were our boys conducting tests from most likely Picatinny Arsenal or some facility up there. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Alec Barker, who puts in a 5. And he said, I have no idea what this channel is, but I saw a really messed up marmot, and that's enough for me. And that's the point. Look at him. We're glad to have you, Alec. We're glad to have you.
And I thank you so much for it, and I love to hear that you joined us because of the marmot. I mean, that's actually pretty cool. So a big thanks to you for the support. And also, I know that we're running late, but some people are now getting quite confused. They said, isn't the Second Amendment for overthrowing the government? Hell no. No. Like, the Second Amendment is so that way you can buy guns, so that way if the country was invaded, or if we needed to raise an army, the state government could call on you to form a militia, and you're already pre-armed because of your own accoutrements to go and serve in the state militia. That's what the Second Amendment is. The founding fathers didn't go, why, yes, let us give everyone the right to overthrow the government we just made. Do you know what George Washington did when he became the first president of the United States? He went and overthrew a bunch of people who were rebelling in Pennsylvania, and it's called the Whiskey Rebellion. A couple of them got killed. Go look it up. Like, no, the U.S. government at no point ever has given the authority outside of the democratic process of the vote for anyone to conduct an armed action to usurp the democratic process or to just overthrow the government because they happen to not like it. That's not the purpose of the Second Amendment. That is an ignorant misinterpretation that's been pushed forward by a whole bunch of rednecks in the boonies that sit there and go, man, I think I got a gun because the government needs me to overthrow them. Why in the hell would the government that wants to keep itself in power because it's its own existent creation give someone an ability to overthrow them? That just doesn't even make any sense at all. It completely defeats the social contract and every other sort of a philosophical concept behind governance. Like, that's not at all
Right.
it. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Kyle Padella, who puts in the 5. He said, take my money, Jack.
And I thank you for the support, and we will, Jack. Thank you, Jack. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to LSA Sergeant Figman. And Sarge puts in a 2. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He said, LSA, hit the like button. That's in order.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep this thing running. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to B. Woodward and Plazoth, who each put in a $2 support. And thank you both very much, Plazoth and B. Woodward, for that support as well. Also, a shout out to Tracy once again for that $5 support. But I do have to remind you, we do not cover religion nor politics in our chat. So while we do appreciate that support, we can't get into that on the stream, because that violates our rule. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Bruce Lee, who puts in a 2. And they said, Russia really knows how to burn through fuel and LSA.
And they really do, honestly, pun intended. And a big thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to AXLR, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, AXLR, for that support. They said, did y'all see the video of the Secretary of War hitting the gritty?
No, I hope I don't. Honestly, I don't think I want to. But a big thanks to you for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Andre Storkula. And thank you very much, good sir. He said, it's the Russians attacking Discord. It's gotta be.
And I would have to say, maybe. But that's allegedly. But a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that is addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
I like it when you say allegedly. I like that right there. Couching those statements. I like that. Like a pro. You gotta like that right there. But our next one here goes to...
Also, man, I'm sorry, man. I know we're running late. I know we want to get off air, but I have to do this for some folks because I keep on seeing people say, well, read the Second Amendment. I'm going to go and read y'all something here really quickly. Let's see.
Oh, boy. The Second Amendment.
Oh, here we are. Okay, so for the people who say that the Second Amendment lays out your right to conduct an armed rebellion against the government, let me go to Article 1, Section 8, of the U.S. Constitution. This is not a U.S. code that was ratified within the past 80 years or 100 years. This has been the U.S. Constitution in its unaltered and unadulterated form for 200 or so years since 1787. In Section 8, Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, it states that the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect, blah, 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 and also conduct these actions as well. And one of the last ones listed is to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union. That's what the Second Amendment is for that militia. Militia is not a regular standing force like the Army Reserve or the National Guard or the regular Army. The militia is the citizenry. We can just call up random people from their houses in town, tell them to grab their gun and come forward to support and call forth the militia, which is you guys, just the random people, by the orders of the state or by the federal government, to execute execute the laws of the Union, or to suppress insurrections, which is an armed uprising against the government, that's the literal textbook definition, and repel invasions. That is an enumerated power, meaning it is literally specifically written down as a duty of the Congress. So there is nothing in the Constitution that says that you have a right to conduct an armed rebellion against the government. The Second Amendment gives you the right to own your own firearm personally, so you can buy your own gun and your own ammo, so that way when the state or federal government called you up to serve, at least historically by the definition, you would be prepared on your own to serve with your own weapons, accoutrements, and equipment to execute the laws of the Union, suppress armed rebellions, or to repel invasions. That is your duty of owning a firearm in this country by its original historic interpretation. And I know a lot of people have lost that in the weeds and the arguments completely moved well on from that, but that is the historical reason why people in this country have such an unlimited access to firearms, is because you have an access to firearms to protect the amazing nation that we have from armed insurrections and invasions, and to also execute the laws of the Union when called forward by our governors or our president. That's what you have the ownership of firearms for. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one goes to Tracy once again, who puts in a 20 and said, I love science and nature.
And thank you so much for the support. And I would have to say, I do as well. It's very interesting stuff. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And a big shout out to Dubstep Kid 801 for putting in a $1 support. And we do appreciate it very much, Dubstep Kid. And thank you very much for helping to keep the channel running as well. And it's now time to jump on, folks, from our super chats and on to our live chat questions and our Morse code decoders of the stream. Tonight, we had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, Her Royal Fluffiness, Kush, Kopioterix, and Sire. They said the Morse code says, and NATO is doing good with this show for us today, but they should shoot the drones down, and LSA.
And I would... That's the sound of money. Y'all got that down on the nail, and I'd have to say that y'all got that down on the money. That was the jackpot, and I gotta congratulate the Lee Spring Army Signal Corps for getting that correct time and time again. A massively amazing and impressive thing, and a wonderful thing to know that y'all are continuing to help this channel to keep on knowing what the Morse code message is. And so with that, folks, due to time constraints, and also due to the fact that the stream is nearly 4 hours long, we're going to be getting 3 live chat questions, and then rounding out this stream for the night. And so with that, we are on to, let's see, MM threw in a 5 and said, what if the government is hijacked by another country? Well, then we've most likely surrendered at that point, and the whole Constitution has probably been thrown out. So I wouldn't really know what to do at that point, but then you would have to ask the question, is that even the U.S. government anymore, or is that the government of another country? Then you would have to ask that sort of a question. But I hope that does address the best I can. Big thanks to you for support. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to CM Grip, who said, so what do you see as the straw that breaks the camel's back in regards to kinetic kickoff, and what theater is most likely?
I would say that the straw that's going to break the camel's back might actually be the shooting down of a Russian aircraft in NATO airspace, at least in Europe. In East Asia, the straw that broke the camel's back is really on the Chinese, for that matter, to see what they're going to do to get us to go to war with them, because the ball's kind of in their court on getting anything going there. And in the Middle East, it really is just Iran getting closer to creating a nuclear weapon, and then they're going to force us to respond. So that would be the straw that breaks the camel's back, at least within those 3 key areas. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Mr. Glock Who's There, LSA. And he said, don't you think that the surrounding nations are bird dogging the Russian ship 24/7? They know if drones are being launched from it. And I would agree with you, Mr. Glock. I would say they should know, because if they're monitoring the ship the way they say they're monitoring it, then they have surveillance flights literally hovering over that ship 24/7. So if they don't know if the drones are coming from that ship yet, then I would say our NATO partners are incompetent. And I don't believe they're incompetent. I think they know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say they probably didn't know until they found the ship just, I believe, a day or 2 ago. And now they're observing it 24/7 from what we know. So I would say that they should know now, but during the prior incursions up until today, they probably did not know if that ship was launching the drones or not, at least from what they've stated publicly. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. So who is the lucky last person that threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Robert Krogan. He said, does, excuse me, goodness, but Robert said, does Belarus having those missiles in their country, the Oreshnik, make them a target now?
Not really. This could be considered some sort of armed support by Russia to Belarus, which we really can't react to that much, unless if Belarus shoots those at us, then we can react. But them just being inside of Belarus, it's not anything that can kick off a war or we can start bombing the Belarusians for, at least at the moment. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and we've actually reached the end of tonight's stream. I have to thank you all so much once again for enjoying this stream tonight. We have had 196,000 views before we rounded out the stream tonight. This is actually a larger stream tonight, crazily enough, than the night before, at least in overall viewership. And we also reached a peak viewership of 20,000 people who were here. I've got to thank you all so much for watching the show tonight. If y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to subscribe, make sure to like and comment, because if it wasn't for y'all, we wouldn't be able to keep this show running. And we'd love to have y'all all here tomorrow when we cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And if we have enough news to cover in the midday, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that short war summary. And so with that, we will see you all either in the short war summary or in the stream tomorrow. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Hurram Slava, long live the Republic, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight. And it is now officially almost 1 a.m. in the morning Central Time. So a 4-hour-long stream tonight. And we want to thank all 200,000 people that were here by the end of the stream. And we will see you all tomorrow on the stream again at 10 p.m. Eastern as well. And also on that short war video at midday as well. So with that, folks, Slava Ukraine, Hurram Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Army shall stand.